All right, peace, people. Back with another installment of Real Talk with Tehran Poole. And today, he's been on before. Maybe not Real Talk, but he's been on open panels before. I know my open panels aren't up, but we are here with Luka Dawuud to
Yes,
talk about
yes.
the passing of the fashion icon Virgil
Yeah,
Abloh.
yeah,
Okay, so you know, I really didn't know too much about Virgil. I've
yeah,
heard about him via Kanye. I watched Kanye's most recent interview with the Drink Champs. I do recommend people to go and check that out. And I heard his name mentioned, and that's really when he flew on my radar. At least flew on my radar and kind of stayed on my radar. Like, who is he? Only to come to find out recently he passed away.
yeah.
So what did he mean to contemporary fashion and culture? Because I know Dawood, anybody who knows you knows that you're into fashion. You're with Mizan,
Yeah.
and that's what you're pushing. So, this is right up your alley. What did
Yeah.
he mean to contemporary fashion and culture?
Well, Virgil, obviously, my condolences goes to his family. Um, he was a trailblazer. He really comes in sort of the late 2010s and really shakes up the industry. Virgil sort of represents uh, a sort of an archetype of like individuals and groups of people and collective who really storm into the fashion industry, which um, previously was a very archaic sort of um, old money industry with tight gatekeeping, and he really breaks down the barriers and sort of in a military fashion really carries the flag to the deepest territory of the enemy.
All right,
uh,
so if you could pause right there for a second because you said
sure.
something really interesting that I didn't know about. So the fashion industry is or before was made up of as you termed old money, people who have been in there what it sounds like generationally, have the clout behind their name,
Yeah.
and if you don't have that behind you, sounds like might be hard for you to break into that type of industry.
Sure, sure. Yeah, exactly that. So the fashion industry really is, for a very long time, was a playground for the rich, and it upheld its power and its prestige via exclusivity. So that was sort of the bread and water of the fashion industry, especially when it came to like fashion shows and stuff like that. You would have
Mhm.
been handpicked to attend, and it was not something for the average Joe. I mean, it's still very exclusive to an extent, but Virgil and others like him really rip off the hinges of the doors, and allow more uh, voices in, and especially the fashion industry has like these moments where they're almost like you could say an onslaught. You have something similar happening in the 80s with the Japanese,
Mm.
and this is back in the 80s where the French fashion, because fashion per se, so modern fashion per se, it's a very European affair,
Mm.
and and in the 80s, I guess from the little knowledge I have, the 80s is really represents the first time that outsiders come and do something that is so radical. And I'm talking about Yoji Yamamoto and Reika Kubo. These are all legends now, but they kind of, if you like, change really what was happening in fashion. But then for a very long time, it goes back to Europe again, and you have the Dutch and the Belgian fashion designers who are like incredible as well. But Virgil feeds off of these like a lot of the Dutch and Belgian fashion designers who fed off the Japanese designers. So
Mm.
there's like a trail of energy of disruption that kind of is hereditary. So it's like sort of passed down, and it's an inheritance almost. Um, and Virgil really comes in that line.
Okay, so I just have actually a couple questions from what
Sure,
you just told me. What got you into fashion?
sure. Um, I think it's to do with obviously my household. Um, I remember so my earliest memories of fashion is Versace jeans. So Versace jeans collection that my dad was wearing. Um, the Jean Paul Gaultier perfume man that he was wearing. I can smell it now, thinking of that time. So it was really sort of like just passed down to me.
Mm.
My dad is from Congo, DRC, and we quite known to be really deeply into fashion. And this is sort of back in the early 90s. My dad and my uncle, um, although being very young immigrants, trying to fight themselves and trying to be resistant in sort of a European country like Germany, were still very heavily involved in fashion themselves. So I think I right off the batch, I just took that on, and yeah. So basically, I think that's how I got really into fashion.
Was it something that you picked up just by watching, or was it something that they kind of like really hand to hand passed on to you? Like, did your father take you by the hand and say, or not maybe say, but
Yeah,
kind of this, if you kind of get what I'm saying, how some
sure,
things are caught
sure.
and some things are taught.
So yeah, I think it's like a mix between the two. I was a very strong observer as well. So for example, if my dad or my mom would get ready for like parties, because that is something that we do quite a lot, like something that we don't really do much, inviting people to the house, whether it was for a birthday or like yeah, mainly birthdays. So you would invite people around, and what was so strange back then was like whether it was a birthday, a kiddie's birthday or like an adult's birthday, to me they were kind of the same in terms of importance.
Mm.
And I would see my dad getting ready, I would see my mom getting ready. It was that. But then also my dad really, and this is real story, my dad really paid a lot of attention to the stuff I would wear as well, and my mom as
Mhm.
well. They were very like they would really pay attention to the stuff that I would wear and the things that would be put me in. Um, so it's just this thing, I guess. You've made it to Europe. You're in Europe now, and it's just like I think compensating for the other things that you may not have. Clothing sometimes could be sort of the easiest way to yeah compensate.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I
Yeah,
seen that in my own community. I think
yeah,
Black Americans, I don't want to say we encapsulate that the most, but yeah, like what you said, man, when people on the lower end of the spectrum of having nice clothes seems to be something that they take pride in, or at least we need to, be able to put on some nice, clean clothes and act the part, if
Yeah,
that makes any sense.
yeah, yeah,
But it's not acting though. I really do feel clothes does something for you, almost like getting a
yeah.
hair. You know what I'm saying? When you think
Yes,
about it,
yes,
it sounds
yes.
very like how could that? But when it's on you, the feeling you get is indescribable.
And this is precisely what Kanye and Virgil understood very early on, professionally at least. I mean, we're talking about me being a consumer. In fact, I remember the first ever jeans I designed. I designed the jeans, but it was made by my auntie because she was
Mm.
like a like master seamstress almost. And the denim I used was the Levi's twist. I have it till this day actually. Honestly, this is
Okay,
like
I know about the Levi's twist. Levi's is my favorite pair. I probably don't own any other jeans, but I actually know for a
yeah.
fact I don't own any other Levi's but jeans. I mean, even
Yeah,
any jeans but Levi's.
yeah. So I actually I have the pair here till this day, and I didn't like sort of keep it because I designed it. What I mean, I just kept it because I don't know, sentimental emotions attached to it. But that denim was the first ever piece I had designed, and it's quite telling because it was given to me, or I took it from my dad. So there's the straight link there.
But what do you mean that your auntie made it? Did she
So
she
basically,
made
she
it?
was she was so I designed it. I told her what to do with it. I brought her some
Oh, okay, okay.
material, and then
I was
she
thinking like she made the jean material. I was about
oh
she must have some type. She must got skills nobody else has.
No. Yeah, she basically finished my idea, you know, and she materialized the idea, um,
Okay.
or helping me doing so. And actually, quite funny, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, when I was to Germany, I was in Germany. We did our first ever pop up in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
She actually helped me putting sort of the labels into the t-shirts. So you know, full circle. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it's yeah. I guess I had always sort of like support from the family, but I must say also I always was always in I was always sort of like a creative type. I think
Mm.
that's just my personality. I've always been sort of involved in creativity. My imaginations were quite wild, even when I used to play with like toys and stuff. I would build cities. Every child did that in the 90s, right? But I think
Yeah.
I was very obsessed with that. And for a very long time, I would play with toys as well, like until I was 12 or something, bro. It was weird. Like I'll play with toys, you know, and then outside I would be like trying to be sort of the big guy.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
actually I think it was 12. 12 was the time where I actually stopped playing. I think it was like 11 or 10 or something. Um, but yeah, I've always been involved, man. I've always been involved in creativity. And I feel like what really kind of solidified that I will be going down this path was when this is back in 2015 or something like that, or 14. I'm back home. I went back home Germany to visit my family, and my younger sister, she had like this app where she could like check the meaning of like Congolese names, because that's where I'm from originally, Congo, DRC.
Mhm.
And then obviously like this thing when Africans have like several names. So my name is Kangudi, right? And she basically checked what Kangudi meant, and then I was shocked. I was literally shocked. So
What did it mean?
Kangudi apparently means artist,
Okay. Wow.
and I was
That's
like, wow,
interesting.
this is very Adamic, you know, very Adamic in a sense where like naming things and then these things become follow a certain
I,
pathway.
I I believe that though. I mean, I don't know how much weight it really has on a person's personality,
Yeah,
but I think the name you can, almost like a boy named Sue. If you've heard that song, and why his father named him Sue, which you only come to find out at the end of the song.
yeah,
But it was in order to make him tough because he
yeah.
knew that a boy named Sue would have to either learn how to fight or die. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
um, so
yeah,
yeah, naming your child a certain name, in your case, artist.
sure.
But you didn't know. So
I didn't
I
know.
make me wonder: is there like some type of metal? You just putting it out there, even if your child doesn't know it, but it almost like
It's
you kind.
crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know how these things work out.
Yeah, it's like, bro, I didn't know for like, say, good 26, 25 years. I didn't know at all. And then when I found out, I was like, okay, now everything makes sense. Everything makes sense. I know why I was a certain way, you know. Um, I think um I think Carl Jung calls this synchronity or synchronicity. This is basically the idea that certain things that happen in your life have like a deeper meaning and how they shape like moments and like events.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, I felt a bit like that. Um, but you know, it's like also I had and this going back to Virgil Abloh, which I want to be talking a bit
Yeah.
more in a
Sorry, I didn't
second.
mean to take you so far away from the
No,
main
no,
topic.
it's cool. It's all cool. It's all cool. So speaking of Virgil Abloh, I mean Virgil Abloh becomes a household name in the fashion industry via approximation. So he's approximated to Kanye West. So he becomes sort of Kanye West's first ever uh, creative director on his creative agency called Donda.
Mhm.
And this is back in 2002. It's very interesting that they've been connected that long because, I mean, for those who know a bit of like Kanye's discography, Jesus Walks and what was this first album again?
Late registration, was it? Was it late or
Graduation,
gra- yeah, great. It was, yeah, it was no, it wasn't. It was called like college dropout or something, right? Wasn't it?
College Dropout. That's it. College Dropout, right?
Because then he was like late registration and then graduation.
Yes, yes. So college dropout, for example. I mean, Germany is like a very strange place. It's like in Germany, our connection, for example, I've noticed the connection to what happens in America in this country versus what happens to the connection between Germany and America is far more um, deeper and stronger. And that has maybe to do with like what happened in Germany, obviously, Second World War. So like Germany sort of like loses out, like empties itself out because of the guilt and the American occupation, of course.
Yeah, yeah. But
Mass
I've heard people say that Germany is an American vassal, or
Yes,
or something like that.
yes,
Something like that.
basically, yeah, it's true. So
Even though Germany is basically carrying the EU, from what I understand. And
yeah,
to be fair, I'm not talking about Germans like but the German culture. I rate German culture. Just
okay, yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
Um, Having grown up in Germany, a lot of
yeah,
the Germans I come across tend to
yeah,
be very intelligent, tend to
yeah,
be like really deep thinkers. I
yeah,
mean, and I could probably go off into Islamic studies as well. The German Islamic
sure,
studies scholars
sure,
are very, I think, are some of the best out there.
yeah,
And yeah, man, it's just something about German culture. I'm not saying it has anything to do ethnically or whatever. It's just
yeah,
the culture bred in Germany, how it affects the
yes,
people who live there.
yes, 100%. And our link to hip hop was very strong. So that means when Kanye came out with like Dropout in 2002, I think it was 2002 or 2004 actually. I think.
2004, yeah, 'cause I think
Yeah.
my junior senior year.
Yeah. So when he came out with, I was in a know-how, and I was like a young teenager. I literally was following Kanye's ever since then. Like Jesus Walks just was so penetrative because I always had like this parche, like this thing for like gospel music from
Yeah.
very early on, and like soul music, but gospel in particular because it was so deep and it connected. So like just the voices and the way they did it was to me was just always amazing. Sort of like identifying with African American culture deeply because that was my representation, right? Like my environment was like very mixed, Russian, Albanians, actually very, very good friends of mine are Albanians, like my first ever friends are Albanians,
Mm.
um, Turkish, Arab, like it was very mixed. And but like my representation or the way I sort of was borrowing coolness was via the African American experience.
Mm.
And even if it means it was just, I was at the end just a consumer in a way because I was never able to sort of experience the lived experience, or really taste what it meant to be an African American.
I don't know, but talking to a Polish guy, it really made me
Yeah,
take a second thought about how people interpret what they hear concerning well, I think we
yeah,
were talking about music.
yeah,
But that he basically what he said, he's like, yeah, I know I didn't grow up he was talking about Kendrick Lamar. Yeah, I know I didn't
sure,
grow up in Compton. I didn't maybe experience a lot of what he's talking about literally, but metaphorically, I can identify with some of the, he basically he was saying, hey, look, when they're talking about killing people, whatever, there's some things in my life I like to kill too. You
yeah,
know what I'm saying? But just how he was interpreting the lyrics got me thinking like, okay, there's different ways that people can connect to
sure.
to these things without it being a one-to-one comparison.
Yes, I have to agree to that. I have to agree to that. And I mean, what I was trying to say was like perhaps authentically experience everything because geographically I couldn't,
Mm,
but it was nevertheless it was still my representation, and I felt really drawn to Kanye's music because it was again he was sampling a lot of these soul music, but then also um he was just different. He
mm,
was really, and remember I was already on this fashion thing because of my parents and like b-boying, so being a b-boy back then and like there's this like philosophical term when like I talk Mizan.
Hmm.
Obviously, Mizan itself has a loads of like terms that like you have to get yourself familiar with. In fact, I've been working on this like little dictionary with all the terms and their explanation. So Timbuktian or civilian and these type of things. But like another term is stylism, which is sort of like the idea that like style is content, or there's purpose in style. And style leads my design practice as well, because like as a b-boy back then, it was not about technique, it was not about being technical, it was really about understanding that you're authentically who you are, and you sort of try to find your own style, your own individual style
Mm.
in the way you dance, but also in the way you dress. So you could be all wearing sort of the Adidas Superstars or the Nike Cortez, but like the fat laces would be in a different color, or
Yeah.
you'd be doing something differently, you see. And that was something you wanted to be your own, and not really in sort of in a liberal hyper individualistic society, but more to do with like honing and bringing out the person you are, right, your own individual self, and then interacting with that, a bit like Power Rangers, or a bit like
Mm.
um Marvel here superheroes that have different sorts of like superpowers. So it was a bit like that. And I feel like Kanye, he was so different when he came out, and the music that he was making and the way he was dressing. So back then it was all about the polo, the Ralph Lauren polo, and the Quadri jacket, and the backpack, the Louis Vuitton backpack. And that was and it was like slightly more fitted than, for example, what Jay-Z was doing with Rockaware
Yep.
and Dipset and all these other like entities, and it translated into the music as well.
Mm.
um, and I feel like I was drawn to Kanye very, very early on in his career, and Germany allowed me to have access um, to hip hop so well. um I was able basically to just follow the whole journey. But little did I know that back then Virgil was already in the camp. He was already in the background, um
Mm.
throwing ideas and references and all these. And this is, to me, it's just mind-blowing that I've been
So did
basically.
Virgil help kind of create the Kanye style? I mean, that
Yes,
we
yes,
see.
100%. Whether it was his album covers, or whether the way Kanye was dressing,
Mm.
Virgil was there with him. They were learning with each other. They were cross-pollinating with each other, and they were basically also very entering these industries together. So they have a very deep connection. Um, and yeah, so Virgil, I think, sort of at the early 2000s, so about 2008, 9, um, sets up his boutique in Chicago. It's called Air SVP, and that's sort of like a very famous, sort of legendary boutique now. That sort of, it's like a multi-layered boutique that carries loads of other brands, but then also he was carrying his own brands and the own things he was doing. And I think that gave him like an edge as well, to just like cultivate the following. um Fast forward about like 2 to 4 years later, I think this is early 2010. Virgil comes out with this brand called Pyrex, and there's
Mm.
this legendary video um, on YouTube till this day. So it's a Pyrex vision, and that was really the beginning of a new era. It was so different. It was like,
So what explain this
yeah,
pirate? What's so different about it? What
yeah.
new era was ushered in by the creation of this?
Sure, sure. So Pyrex was really sort of the beginning of what we've come to know now. So the mix between high fashion and streetwear. He really clashed sort of high culture, bro culture, with like street culture in hip hop, and like very similar. And he's talked about this previously in his I think Harvard University lecture, where he says that he really took the idea of sampling. Like what made hip hop so radical was that they would sample soul music and then put like all the beat underneath, and he was doing pretty much the same. So he would sample references and ideas, and this is something that he became very controversial, and his name has drawn a lot of controversy. But I feel like that has more to do with like them not understanding his philosophy. But we were talking about this in a bit. But yeah, so Pyrex was really a mix between. So, for example, he would have hoodies with like Renaissance painting, the Caravaggio or Michelangelo, right? And then he would have like a 23 for like a Jordan reference, and then he would have like champions shorts and champions hoodies. And he started off really, I think the first ever one of his first ever products was a flannel. And what he did was he bought like polo flannels for like $40 and sold them for £500, $500. So things like that he was doing. He printed on the back of those flannels as well.
Is that where Kanye West got the idea? What was it? Some years ago, he released like a shirt for a ridiculous. It was like a plain shirt for a ridiculous amount of
Yeah,
money.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, they weren't the first people. I mean, the high fashion people have been doing it for like decades, but like they basically took the idea and ran with it, and Pyrex vision. And Pyrex, obviously, you know the reference, right? In America, Pyrex, so it's like
yeah, with the coffee pots, the cook up
yeah,
dope.
the
But
cocaine,
really actually make some pretty good products. You
yeah,
could drop that thing from a building and it
yeah,
break.
yeah, and like it's basically sort of a nudge or a reference to sort of drug culture or like gang culture, because a lot of the drug dealers would use Pyrex pots to cook the cocaine. And he had to close down Pyrex because of like obviously the actual company didn't run with that. You couldn't just it was protected basically.
You know.
Um, and yeah, and then what happened next was that
Hey, side note, what do you do in that situation? I've always wondered.
yeah,
You got a company, you got this thing out there,
yeah,
and then the wrong people start using it for the wrong reasons.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I,
So
no,
yeah,
no, go ahead, because
so yeah, it depends. Sorry,
no,
go ahead.
no, go ahead, because I just
Yeah,
find it to be very funny.
sure. Sure. So it really depends, because it's like first of all, there's actually literally a criterion you have to meet, which is you have to become famous enough for them to actually care. Once
Mm,
they see that you're actually making loads of money and you're sort of gaining attention, and that it becomes a problem for them, because then they can argue that their own customer base is getting it confused with your brand. That's basically the basis of like sort of like a copyright for a name. But usually what happens is like you get letters. They warn you. It's like warning, or cease to exist letters. They'll tell you, for example,
cease
something
to
like,
breathe.
yeah. So, for example, well, this is Pyrex, and we categorically forbid um, making it clear to you that you're not allowed to use this. And then I think if you get 3 or 4 of them, then they can take you to court, basically. Um, yeah. So it's usually nothing very serious, unless you're such like a major brand. So safe to say Nike has been taking loads of people to like court other smaller brands because of like they like believe that a lot of their designs has been ripped off. So like there's this like again capitalism and this idea of like um was a conceptual property, the concepts and ideas can be literally uh, be monopolized. As I personally have a very very strong aversion to this. But then again, I'm similar to Virgil. I am also from the hip hop culture, so I understand the whole idea behind sampling. But he had to close down the company, and he moved on to think much bigger things with Off White, which is obviously till this date the biggest brand that came out in the last decade.
And I was surprised to find out, I was reading earlier that they had surpassed Gucci. I think was it 2018, maybe
Yes,
all the way even currently, still to
yes,
this day.
yes. So there's this index that tracks the relevancy, I guess, and then also the quarterly returns of like what the company has made for that one quarter. But there's this index, I forgot what it is now, but it's this particular index, there's two that they go by, where they rank, they literally rank like labels. So for example, right now I can see that Off-White is ranked number 5th, and that's probably to do with like because of Virgil's passing, and Louis Vuitton, which is a multi-billion company, ranked number 10, and it's based upon relevancy matrix. So how many times people Google Louis Vuitton versus Gucci, and then they say, well, Off-White is more relevant than Gucci because there's more hits for Off-White, and that in turn affects if Off-White is a public run company on the stock market, affects then the shares. It's crazy like that. It's crazy.
So even if Gucci sells more, if Off-White has more clout, it
Yeah,
would still get seen as
yeah,
more. Okay, wow. All
yeah.
right.
But in terms of like the their worth, and so how much Off-White is worth, Gucci will obviously be more worth. But just in terms of relevancy, Off-White is going to be much more relevant and therefore higher ranked. And this is all to do with perception. This is the craziness. It's all to do with perception. But I mean, it's also very empirical because obviously the Google can give you the statistics on what is being searched the most.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's cloud basically. You're right. So he does Off-White, but many people don't know this. Virgil actually, and there's this model. There's a couple influencers who are running with the same model in Germany. So it's basically an agency that has been. It's not the same agency, but by the way, I'm just mentioning that that's just something that happens in Germany. But Virgil basically has this thing called Bintro. This is just before Off-White. So it was a DJ collective, and there were a couple people in there. It was Heron Preston, Matthew Williams. I don't know if Jerry Lorenzo was part of that, but I think he was associated for sure. And Bintro was like a DJ collective, and they would basically just tour the world, tour Europe, tour America, throw parties, and like sell merch, t-shirts, and that became extremely influential because of like the emergent technology, like Tumblr was major back then, and Instagram was like just beginning to become like this massive thing, and all of that, like for the first time, in a very very almost instant way, culture was synchronized.
Mm.
So someone in Hamburg, Germany, if he was on Tumblr, he would have known about Bintrill. And funnily, you know when you know when something is very very impactful is when 24 Top Man or H&M are start to sort of copy like fonts and like designs, because a lot of the Bintrill stuff was being copied by loads of other brands.
And
But
is Ben Trill is where's that from?
so it was a DJ collective that turned into a brand.
No. I mean, what out of what country did it come out of? You might have mentioned.
So it was all American. It was Matthew Williams, who is now head of like Givenchy, Heron Preston, who's head of like he's doing something with Calvin Klein right now,
Okay.
and Virgil. But again, this is so important. I have to mention this because when we get to like sort of the final state, which we will approach soon with Virgil Abloh, you will see that his group of people literally are dominating the fashion industry as we speak right now for the new generation, and they have kicked down doors for certain. But like for anyone who knows a bit more, and obviously I can't mention everything, there were more individual. There was like a whole movement of people, influencers, it girls, it people, cool boys, like this guy, what's it called? Ian Connor, right? And these type of individuals who were like massive on Tumblr. Sort of ASAP Rock and the ASAP Mob were very heavily rocking sort of the early Pyrex stuff and making it even more popular, because like, so there's like this link between all of this, and that generation really is the generation that is like calling the shots now, at least in sort of junior positions. And then Off-White basically is Virgil leaves Bentrol, he leaves Pyrex, and then he starts to frequent more Europe, in particular Italy. He makes meaningful connections with like Palm Angels, the guy who's behind Palm Angels. I don't know his name now. And there's this other brand, Marlo Burton, I believe. And they basically bring Virgil and Heron Preston on. And I don't know if Matthew Williams was part of this deal, but they bring them to this agency, this Italian agency. And the Italian agency goes to them and says, look, we will sort out everything. The whole production, everything, literally everything. You can live out your wildest dream with us. We will give you a team. You were trying to build a team, and we're going to sell the stuff for you. This is basically what Off-White was. Virgil didn't physically own Off-White. He was more the face of Off-White. And then this is very interesting as well, because it's going to make more sense later. So yeah, and he runs with that for a very long time. His connections to the music industry, the Migos, Virgil was incredible. He was this amazing connector between the worlds. He was heavily involved in the UK scene. He understood very early on what was happening in the UK. Had long-lasting relationships with like a lot of the music industry and music scene in the UK, with people like Benji B, who were doing BBC One Extra for a very long time. Benji B, then there's also Judah. I have to give shout outs to Judah. Very cool, very good friend of mine. But those type of people in London connect with Virgil, and I know this fact in the early 2000s. I didn't even notice that Virgil was already connected to those people. And then like about 2014, 2000, so from onwards, so 2012 to 2014, like this massive explosion happens in culture. So Instagram now becomes this like cool thing, like for those who know use it. And via Instagram, all these like tribes are starting to build, and all these moments are starting to build, and all these like for the first time, like fashion weeks are now starting to become something that like someone who's, say for example, from like Brooklyn, or someone who's from like Brixton or so, they're all starting to attend these venues and these like so like there's a change happening around 2014, and this is pretty much when I started Mizan as well. So like it's this like you told me about this 100th monkey effect, that like separately things happen at the same time without even having any like connection.
Oh yeah. How
with each other.
Like monkeys in one part of the world started doing something, and then monkeys in a different part of the world started doing it. It's like, how did they even have that kind of? Because you know, I'm of the opinion, like, man, when consciousness shifts, it's you know, it's maybe I might not be able to articulate it the way I want, because it kind of came out of left field. I wasn't thinking about it, but yeah, continue with the 100th monkey thing.
So basically, I mean, this is back in 2014. I wasn't even like, you see the whole Tumblr era, what I told you about, and like early Instagram. I completely missed it, because my brother would tell me about this collective called Places and Faces, which is from London, and they're massive right now as well. And they're like kind of weird. It's a brand, but it's also like an agency. They do loads of things. And like, I remember he was telling me back in 2013 or something about Places and Faces, and he was telling me how like there's like these cool kids and they travel the world and they're doing cool things. And I was back then, I was like heavily involved sort of in the Dawa scene. So like I had left off the creative thing for like a while, so I wasn't aware of all this happening. Then out of like doing some business with like a good friend of mine, I then was like pushed into this whole idea of like independence, and like it was very radical back then. It's still very radical, but back in 2014 it was very radical to like be like, well, I'm going to have a website, I'm going to be selling clothes. That was like, and I wasn't even aware of it, but like it was so rare to do that stuff. And yeah, I was like sort of influenced by sort of like 8th century scholars like uh, um who's his name again? I forgot his name. Subhanallah. Very, very famous muhaddith as well. He wrote a book on Zuhud as well. Abdullah ibn Mubarak, rahimahullah. So I
Okay.
was really influenced by him because he was sort of like the merchant scholar, and I was like, I want to be merchant scholar too.
But you know, they all that was the standard back in the day was the
Yeah,
merchant scholar.
yeah,
It's only when scholarship became kind of you can make money from
centralized
it.
almost.
That's when things kind of changed, and you saw scholars not having day jobs, and
Yeah.
being a scholar was a job now.
Yes, yes, yeah, being paid by sort of like the treasury and stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think Abu Hanifa was a merchant scholar.
Yes, he was indeed. He was indeed. And that really influenced me. I was like, rah, that's cool. That's you're independent, you make your own money, but like little did I know that how much work it really took to become that person.
Mm.
But yeah, so that was happening. It was happening. So 2014, I then finally caught up with everything that was like sort of happening in the background. And I literally saw the things unfolding in front of me. I remember like talking on Instagram. It was so easy back then to talk to people that they would actually reply to you. There's this guy called Petit Noir who's sort of like a musician. I remember sending an email to a DM to his girlfriend or wife now, I think, and I was like, "Oh, I got so many ideas. Let's connect. Let's connect." Um, I met very early on. I met Mos Def or Yassine Bey,
Okay.
formerly known as Mos Def. I met him, gave him some of my clothes. I was hang up with him. I was hanging around with him for like God knows an hour or so backstage. Um, Things like that were like a bit more easier back then because there was less happening. But then I had not the know-how. I had missed the whole Tumblr, and so everyone who was on that Tumblr thing was they already had a vision. I was literally learning whilst being on a job type of thing. They
Mhm.
were already very like very clued on things, so very connected, and like we're able to gain loads of attention. So someone like Luka Sabath, Iron Connor. Iron Connor's the guy who sold like Van shoes. Van's old school. He did like a replica of them and sold them and he made 500,000 or something like that in
Wow.
like 6 hours or something like that. Crazy. So that very early, like this type of stuff was happening. So and Virgil is sort of like he was the OG of that generation. He was sort of the OG of that generation. And so Off-White comes in and he presents Off-White, I think 2015, he sets it up. And then there's other individuals who are starting to pop up who were in the background for a long time, but then you start to see them. Someone I kind of really look up to as well, and I've met, or not look up to, he's my peer to be honest, because we get a bit the same age. Someone like Samuel Ross, who
Mhm.
wrote the Cold War, very interesting as well. So the philosophy behind it, sort of like work and class philosophy, is also, or an observation of the working class in the UK. With like sort of like an edge of like luxury, and he's obviously refined a lot of the stuff that he's been doing in the past. But like someone like him, Simon Ross, is a household name, an intellectual. I've met him before as well and had conversations with him. A very delightful person. Um, so he's sort of Virgil's prodigy, because this is something that people don't understand, and that's something that people don't understand about Kanye West, because this really all goes back to Kanye. He is really sort of like the Abraham of the fashion industry. Like they knew, if I don't know if this is blasphemous if I said it, but you know what I mean. I'm trying to create here a very strong parable. Um, Kanye obviously being like a super mega star has facilities. It's very early on with Marc Jacobs at Louis Vuitton. That makes a shoe. Lots of people don't know this. Before Virgil, Kanye made a shoe with Louis Vuitton, 2 shoes
Mm.
made, and they were sold out like crazy. That holy grails to this day. And Kanye also was with Nike before he was with Adidas.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
that's a separate video. We could talk about Kanye in another time. We obviously trying to look at
Keep us on Virgil.
Virgil's legacy. So what's happening here is very, very, very interesting. So you have Kanye, who then obviously opens up a door for someone. Virgil, because he's learned it from someone, he does the exact same thing, and
Mm.
the train continues to this day. And this is something really telling, that it really takes a person to do this. And this is why my attitude when it comes to meeting new people, I'm very open, because I know how it feels to be embraced, and how it feels to be appreciated, and how it feels to be given opportunities, because that has happened to me. Um, for example, a very, very good friend of mine, someone that we also have to discuss eventually, Larry Ashampong, who's like a fine artist, world renowned fine artist, who gave me the ability to design costumes for him multiple
Wow.
times. And he
Wow.
was paying me for it, like good money. And so I understand the whole idea about like opening out. So you open up the door, and you try to keep the door open as long as possible. And that's what Virgil does with Samuel Ross, who, by the way,
Mhm.
is from the UK, who's now a major person to look and to follow. But like, I'm sure if he had just stayed in the UK, had never met Virgil, he would have been struggling just like all of us, you know,
Mm.
um, or he would have prevailed. Who knows? But it was obviously helpful to have Virgil as his mentor. So Off White becomes this very strong brand. Virgil's connections and Virgil's ability to um, have friends with supermodels, like all the new supermodels, like Kylie Jenner, um,
Mhm.
the Hadid sisters. He's very close to them, so he gives them the Off White stuff, and this is how Off White becomes so strong amongst females, because the so-called, what people call the most beautiful woman, conventionally beautiful, um, in Western terms, right?
Yeah.
Are then seen as like influencers. Now they now have the 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 followers, and they're all wearing Off White. So Off White is everywhere.
Mm.
Instagram is run by Off White, literally, and like Off White just is everywhere. And that opens up like all these doors. But the thing is this, and this is nothing I have mentioned from the get go. Virgil Abloh and Kanye, and this is the snobbery, and this is this old money mentality I was telling you about, weren't always accepted by the fashion industry. In fact, there were memes at one point. There's this very, very famous meme that made it to South Park, even. And it was like this famous image of. I wish that we had like images to show people, but we do this another
I
time.
know, man. Next time we could
Yeah,
organize
we do
something.
that another time. Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
the very famous meme where like Kanye, Virgin, blah blah blah, and his friends are dressed funny, and that made it to South Park basically. And they were like sort of a meme, and they were not taken serious. Oh, you guys are not trained. What da da da. So Virgil was like, from. Sorry, go ahead, my bro. Sorry.
No, no, but I wasn't saying nothing. I wasn't gonna say nothing.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so Virgil was a person who was always ridiculed from the start off. It was very hard for him. His critics were fierce, and but he prevailed.
Hmm.
That brother prevailed. He worked and worked and worked. He didn't give up. And the reason why they weren't able um undermine him was because of the community they had. He had a very strong community amongst the celebrities. So
Yeah.
in fact, it didn't matter what you would say. If Offset wears the t-shirt, right, and other people wear the t-shirt, it doesn't matter. It's getting out to the people. And this is where the disconnect happened, because one thing that people always would blame Virgil was that he would basically exploit uh, consumers who were like not knowledgeable about the fashion industry and fashion in general. But I feel like that happened more because he wasn't taken in. So his outset was everyone who was able to see it. If I was a hip hop fan and I followed the Migos, or Drake, or anyone like that, then that's where I see Off White. It looks cool. I've never seen anything like that before. So the fashion industry, so those critics really could could partially blame themselves. But we're gonna go into this in a minute. I'm just running down, and I'm coming to the end. So about 2016, something crazy happens. Virgil basically was mentioned to like, and remember when I was telling you about those Belgian art designers in the 90s who were like influenced by the Japanese
Yeah.
designers in the 80s, right? So there was one designer in particular called Raf Simons, and he's like sort of like an OG, sort of like high regarded, like as seen as one of the major designers that lives with like contemporary designers. And he was asked about Damna, who was running Balenciaga, but at that time he was doing Vetements. He was like newly appointed to Balenciaga. And
Hmm.
like obviously, you know, Balenciaga in America, especially in the hood and everywhere, actually, Balenciaga is very major. Off-White and Balenciaga, these two things, and Gucci, if you like. And Demna obviously is also part of that disruption, right? But then
Mm.
obviously I can't mention all it, but he was part of that disruption. He was so Ralph Simmons was asked in the interview about the new disruptors, and he was like, "Well, you know, Demna, yeah, he's very intelligent. I like what he does, but this the off-white guy, I don't know." And that was really a bullet into the legs. I mean, if one of the greatest designers is not thrilled but what you do, then you have a big problem because then
Mm.
that's the fashion industry. That's like full of sheeps as well, you know. So
The followers.
followers exactly. So that's just gonna cause loads of problems for you. Um, I recall a tweet. I'm sorry that I'm so detailed, but it's just because I've literally
No, no,
observed.
it's okay. I'm
Yeah,
enjoying the history lesson. This is all
thank you,
new to me. Even some of the comments,
thank you, thank you.
you got a creme de la creme saying
Yes,
you're a walking history book. You
thank.
know, so
Yeah,
so
yeah. Clem is
keep it going,
another
bro.
person. Clem's another person I will be mentioning in a second. Clem, stay on, man. It's stay please stay on. But yeah, um, so this thing happens now, right? Um, so Ralph Simmons is asked, and then the response comes back. And I recall this tweet by ASAP Rocky. And ASAP Rocky says, "Yo," because ASAP Rocky, you know, like I at one point used to idolize Ralph Simmons, and he says, "Yo, Virgil, like you got to step up, brother. You got to step up." And you know what? Boy, he did.
Mm.
Boy, he did. Virgil exploded. I don't know what happened. That was like the moment. Because listen, for a very long time, I was very critical of him as well because I was like, look, let's face it. Yes, you're an artist and you're doing whatever you're doing, and you should be like judged by that. But like the skin color thing is just a thing. It's just unfortunately you can't look past it. No, more or less in Europe, maybe in Europe, from a European context, it was not that big, but like from an American like context, it was just big, you know. So it was like
Mm.
the first black till this day, they just call him the first ever black designer who was head of a luxury company, which is not true, but they like saying that. Um, so I was more like, oh, bro, man, you've made it that far for us. Do not mess up for the rest of us, right?
Mm.
So I was like, I was rooting for him, but like more for my sort of like, I was critical as well. I'll be honest. But then he drops. So Virgil, I don't know what happened after that comment because that's really, if you go back in history, that was the moment the guy exploded. Um, I think in 2017. So this is like a year or two after the Ralph Simmons comment. Um, in 2017, I think Kanye got a deal with Nike, and this is really, really, really where everything exploded. Okay, so no, it was actually the same year. It's crazy. So Ralph Simmons' interview was the same year. So in 2017, Virgil managed somehow with his genius way of connecting and using his leverage, gets a deal with Nike. Obviously, Kanye being with Nike previously and sort of having that divorce between Nike and Kanye. But seriously, we could have like another conversation about Kanye separately because it's just going to get too much. So Abloh gets the deal with Nike, and then he creates the 10. And then again, this is, for those people who are like, oh, you know what, Virgil, he just recycles ideas or he just steals idea. I mean, who came up with an idea to design an entire collection that consisted of 10 iconic Nike designs and redo them in such a way that has never been done before. No one has ever done that. He was the first one to have done it. And yes, there was controversy surrounding it because apparently he stole some design ideas from a small Dutch what's it called, designer. But let's nip this in the bud now, right? Because I don't want to be talking about this no more, because obviously he's passed away and I want to focus on the positivity. But let's nick this this argument that people make about Virgil, and that he's like a culture vulture and he steals people's ideas and he oppresses younger, like, and less known designers. First of all, the fashion industry has always consisted of borrowing ideas and reformulating ideas, sometimes doing what's it called, paying homage to someone. So you do the one-to-one design, and for the longest, and this is for me the strongest argument here, for the longest, have Dior, Gucci, and Chanel, all these brands have borrowed from African American culture in particular.
Oh yeah.
So what's the point here? And whilst Virgil was allegedly stealing ideas, I was seeing other people stealing ideas. Rick Owens, for example, there's this boot that he made. I saw that boot on like what's it called? Because I'm always on these like construction company pages who like sell like workwear and stuff. I saw the identical boot, and then I see it 2 months later, Rick Owens doing it. So he stole it. They're all still ideas. It's part of artistry. It's taking and reinventing.
Originality is dead.
Yeah. But it's all this obsession of originality. Or Virgil's not original enough. The other designers, at least, they put like their own twist to it. It was Virgil's design philosophy. He comes from the hip hop culture. He was sampling ideas, and he quotes an authoritative person in the arts, Duchamp. Duchamp did that. Duchamp did the object, the everyday object. So he turned a toilet into an art piece. But that's cool when Duchamp does it, because Duchamp sounds French, is prestige, is part of like what was that movement again, earlier 20th century? I forgot. Dadaism, right? Duchamp is Dada. Duchamp is an intellectual. He's mysterious. It's all cool when he does that, right? But then when like years later someone does it whose name is Virgil Abloh, or and look like Duchamp, then the stands are raised, right? And to me that's just hypocritical. And I don't know why we're putting such a laser focus on the person. We should actually more focus on his trajectory from where he was to where he got. I think that is really, forget the designs. You don't have to like his designs, but look what this man has achieved in 41 years. It's incredible. And I feel like this is where sort of the culture disconnect comes in. Someone like myself, someone like yourself, we can look at that and be like, you know, Virgil, we are proud of you. We are proud of you. We love you, bro. Thank you, Virgil, for carrying that flag so far into the enemy's territory. But someone who isn't part of our culture, has never been part of culture, has been a consumer, who's going to look at Virgil, oh, this uneducated, non-training designer. What is he? You know, that's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. And by the way, he was killing it. And the Nike 10 was a proof of that. If you look at the Nike 10s today, the queues that were in front of the Nike stores, prior to that, Nike was actually doing really, really bad. Adidas was ruling. Adidas was like with Kanye West and everything. Virgil brought Nike back to its prestige. Like,
really?
Let's not pretend that never happened. You know.
While was he still with Kanye? Was Kanye with Adidas and Virgil was under Kanye?
Yes. And this is where we're starting to see the rift between the two. And I don't think, seeing how Virgil was, I think that Virgil, and I don't want to use the word docile, but I think Virgil was he knew how to deal with Kanye. He knew how to work with him, hence why they've worked for such a long time. But I think like when these things were happening, the industry was, I don't know if it was on purpose or if it was just the way it was sort of like ripping them away from Kanye. And Kanye speaks about this. He was like, well, they're all the guys I've mentioned previously, Heron Preston, Matthew Williams, all of them, they all worked with Donda at one point, and the creative agency. And he was like, well, Nike didn't want to give me royalties. Nike didn't acknowledge how much traction my shoes were getting. I mean, the idea of camping for a shoe, right, only happened with Jordans in the 90s. There was no other shoe that had that effect. Kanye West, to my best knowledge, is the second person who manages to get people to camp. My younger brother, who's also heavily into fashion, he was camping for the shoes, for the second Yeezys that came out with Nike. The second Yeezys that came out with Nike, my brother was camping for them. And there was people across the globe who were camping for that shoe. Virgil recreates that moment again with the Nike 10s and redesigns retro Jordans. I mean, the Jordan 1s are everywhere now.
Virgil, of course, man. No, yeah, right? But I'm glad the prices have dropped on them too.
Thank you. Virgil was the first one amongst the few people, influencers, tastemakers, who realized the potential of that shoe. And that really just solidified his name. The Nike, it's like the Nike, and he understood this really well. And this is why Kanye is such an intelligent person. This is something that I want to follow as well in my career. And we're going to talk about what I want to do next, etc. But what Kanye really understood quite early on was, and that's this infamous or famous, if you like, interview between Kanye West and who's the interviewer? Sway in the morning, Sway Universe. Very famous interview where Kanye West literally loses it. And it's the interview between the two where Sway tries to understand the struggles that Kanye goes through, because how can you struggle if you're so rich, Kanye? And Kanye tells him about the barriers. One, that he's a celebrity. So celebrities are just there to sell products, to be faces of the product, versus actually being behind, in a capitalistic sense, being in charge of means of the production, like Karl Marx would say, right? Be in charge of the means of production. Kanye was talking about this, and then Sway says to him, but why don't you empower yourself? And he says, how, Sway? How? It's a meme, basically, right? And that was that time when Kanye was basically trying to figure out, okay, Nike kicked me out. Nike doesn't want to give me royalties. They don't want to tell me when my next shoe, the shoe that I designed myself, my team, they don't even want to tell me when it's going to be released. F you. I'm gonna part my ways. I'm gonna do what I have to do. Adidas, lurking in the background, comes and picks them up. And I think Virgil saw that, the level of elevation, because if you think about these companies, my bro, a company like Nike, for example, I mean, it's an institution. It's a government. Nike, it's a government.
Yeah.
Adidas is it's a government. These are not just companies any longer. They move history. They literally shape history the way we know history to know. And they have extreme power in terms of like scaling up the production, technology, the possibilities from a design perspective are unimaginable. I think, just to cite an example, Back to the Future, right? Very famous sort of 80s blockbusters. And I forgot the main character's name, and McKenna.
I remember Doc and
McHenry or something like that. Anyway.
Yeah.
So he wears like these infamous Nike shoes that lace up themselves, right? And that was a prop back then. Those shoes exist now. They actually exist, right? It's just to show you like the power of like that Nike has. And I think Virgil understands that, and then he just levels up. And from that point, Virgil does it. Samuel Ross gets the deal. Matthew Williams gets the deal. Because obviously Nike now has realized after seeing the success with Kanye at Adidas, we need those people. These are the new tastemakers. We need all of them. And like they sign the entire Don team at that point. So
Wow.
answering the question you asked me, what was happening between Virgil and Kanye. I think they're still family, but just professionally, I think they were starting to go down their ways. And I think Kanye understood that as well, because obviously they had families to feed as well.
Yeah, sure.
So that was sort of like that for an entire year. Up and do you remember when you were saying to me in 2018, Off-White sort of was the biggest brand out there?
Yeah.
That was connected to the Nike collab.
Mm.
A year before that, literally, that was connected to the Nike collab. And again, and this is for anyone who wants to bet game. And I'm studying these pathways myself. I have a very, very strong connection to Adidas myself, and I'm trying to work around it and see how possibly, I could one day design something for Adidas, because I'm very passionate about Adidas myself. I'm more Adidas than Nike, by the way. I know it's very controversial with some people, but I guess it's to do with where I'm from. But 2018, something revolutionary happens. And this really goes back to, and this is where we come into an end now, and then we can open up for another for the rest of the questions. So do you remember when we were saying about like sort of like there is something in history that drives history, and that's sort of beyond individuals, beyond countries or policies or wars or anything. There's something else there that sort of that's like collective subconsciousness, right? That we all are tapped into somehow. I really believe this. And we move all together in a direction. So 2018 was foreshadowed by what was happening in America in 2014, 4 years prior, with what was the protest again in
Was it Mike Brown or something?
Charlottesville? Was it Charlottesville?
Was it Charlottesville or was it Ferguson?
Ferguson, thank you, Ferguson, right? So the appointment of Virgil Abloh a year later after the Nike deal, the industry realized we cannot ignore this guy any longer. He is just causing too much problems. Okay, that's one. And that was foreshadowed by what was happening in Ferguson in 2014, culturally speaking. Because Louis Vuitton, in a very, appropriation fashion, realized culture is changing. Culture is changing, and we want to be the first people to embrace that change. Kim Jones, who was the previous designer at Louis Vuitton, had a very, very long relationship with Virgil Abloh and Kanye. Kim Jones being of a younger sort of generation of fashion designers. He's at Dior right now, and he does Fendi as well. This is where the collection came about between Kim and Fendi recently. So Kim Jones, a true supporter of hip hop, of streetwear, English sort of, I believe, working class. I might be actually wrong, but he grew up on the stuff that we grew up on, and he is absolutely thrilled that he's chilling and with Kanye and Virgil. I think their stories. I saw an interview between the two, between Virgil and Kim Jones. I think Kim Jones was sleeping Virgil was sleeping on Kim Jones' like sitting area, like his flat in London, and they were going through like very old school magazines, like 90s Japanese streetwear magazines. So that's how deep their connection was. So Kim Jones does like this like super like legendary collaboration between Louis Vuitton and Supreme. And this is what I was trying to say to you when he said to me, what is Virgil like? What was Pyrex? Pyrex was that. So Kim Jones, and that was his last collection with Louis Vuitton. He did a collaboration with Supreme, which is sort of like a streetwear brand, and Louis Vuitton being sort of like a high fashion brand, they fused together, and that was record breaking. It was record breaking. The stuff that sold, the resale value on the stuff that came out of that collection. But it was also a way of ushering us into this new era that we're in. And after the departure of Kim Jones, it was there's this thing that people love to do. That's all speculation. It's a bit like football, like the football industry, when people like speculate where Ronaldo's going to go, who's going to replace Mourinho at Man U, these type of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was speculation going on, and then, bro, and I honestly, I was following everything. I did not see this coming. I thought that people weren't ready for this stuff yet, but Virgil was announced as the first black man to run at the brand, to run Louis Vuitton, and that was like it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. The collection itself was decent enough, and it really embodied. It was, to me, it was actually a very beautiful collection, but it really embodied where we were, like the zeitgeist, you know. And it was a breakthrough moment, and that was also the first time I really realized. I said to myself, you know what, I would like it doesn't matter where, I will defend Virgil, and not like in a sort of a tribalistic sense, in a sense of like, and support him, in a sense of like, wow, it really paid off. How can I hate someone like that? How can I hate on someone like that? It's impossible. I'm someone who makes stuff. I'm someone who wants to build stuff myself. Like, I can't hate on someone like that. He made it. That's the highest sort of point you can get in terms of fashion. And the rest is history. He's done breathtaking collections. He then starts doing collaborations with IKEA. He did collaboration with Mercedes Benz, uh, exhibitions at the Chicago Museum, books that he was releasing, um, more boutiques, and really, really incredible stuff. And I think, you know, the metaphor, and I'm going to mention this again, the metaphor of sort of carrying the flag into the enemy's territory cost must have cost his life, because he died of recently he died of a very rare form of cancer that was sort of like located in his heart. And if you watch any of his interviews, when he talks about, like, and people ask him about his work ethic, and I'm so amazed by this, he would tell you, say, well, at 4 o'clock I'm in Las Vegas, catch a plane, next day I'm in Tokyo, DJing, then the day after I'll be in Paris designing, and the day after I will be in Italy doing Off-White. So I believe it took a toll on him. I'm not obviously a medical person, but I mean, if anyone who lives a lifestyle like that, it's you're not gonna last. I mean, after all, you're human, and I feel like the fact that he was constantly working had to do with the fact that he had to prove so much because of where he came from. But you know what? It never stopped him. It never stopped him from working. And I feel like this is something for us to learn, maybe to be more balanced with it, and trying to be. I mean, he was as strategic as it gets, but maybe be even more strategic, so that you don't have to sacrifice your life in the way that he did. Um, and yeah, and Virgil Abloh did what he did. He really changed the fashion industry, uh, and people took notice. And he has loads of people who love him, like myself, and then he has loads of people who hate him. And I think that's the best. That's when you know someone did something in history, when you have detractors and admirers. Um, yeah, are you still there, my bro? They're on. Yo, Tehran. Walaikum
Yeah,
salam.
sorry,
Yeah.
I accidentally I muted myself and to unmute to
Okay.
respond to what you were saying.
Okay,
As
yeah. So yeah, the rest is history. The rest is history. I mean, this was an hour and 30 minutes me just babbling. I haven't bored people to death.
no, you
Um,
didn't. But I
yeah,
mean, and to be honest, we really didn't even get past the first point,
yeah,
which is I think we should make this a series. Um,
100%, bro.
because
I'm all for it. I'm all
the,
for it.
the second one, the second point can go on for another hour as well.
I will try cut it down to maybe 20 minutes or even less.
Oh no, it was awesome. I liked hearing it. This is all news
Okay.
to me. I
Okay.
didn't know the inner workings of the fashion industry. I
Yeah.
had no knowledge of Virgil before. I mean, I was aware of him. I've heard of him, but
Yeah.
you know, you just totally gave me a lot more than what I had known previously. So I
Sure.
appreciate that. And I
Sure.
really did want to dig into, so from an Islamic Black African
Sure.
diasporan
Sure.
perspective, why is it vital for us to have as many academics as artists and
Yeah.
directors in creative industry? Which
Yeah.
that right there is a huge topic and something I've been thinking about myself. Not
Yeah.
even just from a Black African Islamic diasporan
Yeah.
perspective, but just you know, where are the artists, where are the creators, the
Yeah.
makers in the Muslim community, and why
Yeah.
aren't they celebrated? You
Yeah.
know, and I think the ground is more fertile than ever in order
Yes.
to push them to the forefront. You know, because
100%.
we're dealing more in a we're living more in a visual, you know, express. I'm trying to find the right words to articulate what I'm thinking, but I find people into what you're into, the poets, people into fashion. I believe that they have a important role to play in articulating and representing not only you know, Muslims, but in a lot of other different facets of life and groups of people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think you put it perfectly in like perfect words. And um I had this conversation. I have this conversation every single time. It's an ongoing conversation. Um Give him shout out to Clem, for example. He's one of my very close friends. We've worked on stuff a lot. We have these conversations all the time about the importance of like using the arts to um um be part of this, like you really well said, this more and more visual society that we're in. Like it's never been this visual. And things are just about to get even more visual with things like the multiverse and things like that. I mean, we're not going back anymore.
no, we're
So
not.
this like Luddite idea, Luddites, this idea of like rejection of technology, like you will end up participating regardless.
Oh,
Like
regard,
there's
it's gonna
nothing
drag
much you
you
can do
kicking and
about it.
screaming.
Pardon?
It's gonna drag you kicking and screaming.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. So things are just about to intensify, and I think like now it's a time to really and cultivate. It's really about cultivation. I feel
Mm.
like the idea of having black doctors is very important. For example, this is something I was listening to a lecture like years ago, and the guy was about self-image psychology, and he says, there's more black doctors in North America than athletes.
I would
That
never done that.
Yeah, well, he was citing some study. He was saying, well, there's more black doctors than there's athletes. And then he was like, but yet athletes are sort of like seen as something um super high and like peak kids. That's right, this idea, you know, heroes and like gladiators, and there's that type of idea. That's true, but it doesn't but and I feel like someone like Kanye really helped me to understand this, and someone like Biruni, I think a ninth century scholar, um, made me help me to understand this. Someone as controversial as Ibn Khaldun helped me to understand this. Um, the idea Al Andalus, right, as a city, as a place, as a country, helped me to understand this. 10th century Baghdad helped me to understand this. Um, and that's this very Ziryab, all right, 7th or 8th century. Um, many believe of black origin or African origin, who comes to Europe and changes Europe culturally, uh, in any facet you can think of.
Mm.
Syria is really sort of the prototype Renaissance man that we,
Renaissance, man. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. He really changes everything. And I do remember we've talked, because especially yourself, you've been researching for a very long time now, Spain, right? Spanish Spain, and he's such an individual who's sort of at the forefront of like what happens in Spain. Um, but yeah, all these people really helped me to understand that at the basis of everything, and I think even intertwined with religion, culture is at the heart of everything.
Oh, of course, culture matters, man. Culture matters. I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
you know,
Like this idea that religion somehow is separate from culture, or that religion,
it's not.
or this pure thing called religion or philosophy or deen. It's very reductionist, and that is bereft of realism. There's no realism in that, and I'm not interested in a way of life that sort of is in the text or just in theory, but what's
Yeah,
the practice, right?
yeah,
And yeah,
exactly.
so that helped me to understand that we've done it. It's like nothing is new under the sun. Like we've done it before. We've been able to shape like history, and let me tell you how deep this goes. For those people who like never understand what I mean by this, when you read, for example, a very famous book by Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah,
Yep.
Zad al-Mad is a collection of hadiths. In the bab, so in a sub and in a chapter about clothing, he mentions that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam
So,
was wearing khamis al-Rumi. Khamis al-Rumi, which means the outer
shirts of Rome.
garments of the Romans. He was a prophet who prophesied uh, many things. Uh, and he was a prophet who came to connect, i.e., being the Logos, connecting mankind to the ultimate truth.
Mm,
Why would a scholar of the caliber of uh, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah mention that he was wearing that khamis? I thought about this many times, and I'm thinking about this right now. Why would he mention that?
I'm
Because
curious.
he's, huh? Pardon?
I'm curious. I'm trying to think
Yeah,
why.
because
I
the
can't think.
prophet, like any prophet, is logos. The Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is logos. Logos meaning
The
the
word.
connector between the divine and mankind,
Okay.
which means, sorry, go
No,
ahead,
no.
bro.
I thought logos was the word, but I maybe
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah, the word. Yeah, but if you really break it down, it really means that which connects the divine with like the immediate reality. Like,
Mm,
yeah. Um, we recall that hadith Aisha radhiyallahu anha, she says he was the walking Quran. Logos.
yes, character was the
Right?
Quran.
Yeah. So the reason it's mentioned is because there's a very deep connection between the body and what is around the body
Mm,
and what is within the body, i.e., the soul. It's a deep connection. It's a very deep connection. And that the fact that he was wearing a khamis rumi shows you that the Prophet Muhammad SAW was also subjected to the zeitgeist that he lived in.
of course, yeah.
So this idea or this obsession almost about this romanticism, right? Of like going to, I get it. There's some form of it about going to the past. But the Prophet Muhammad was wearing what Heraclius and his people was wearing more than what, say, Moses was wearing 3,000 or 2,000 years before that,
Mm,
right? He was in his time. He was aware. He was contributing. He was interacting. He was he was open-minded enough to do that.
Uh, of course. I mean, I don't believe the prophet was as isolated as some try to make us think,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes. Yes. So these type of things, and then the idea of like this, and this is verse literally is the basis of what Mizan is. And this is a verse in Surah Araf, I think 26. I don't correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm going to paraphrase this into English. And Allah says, Ya Bani Adam, we have sent down clothing to cover your shame and to beautify. But the cloth of God consciousness is much better, and this is a sign for those who think.
Mm,
So this is powerful. So this is the internal word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Speaking of Allah in the Quran will naturally just speak about the most important things in life.
yeah.
And there's not a clear juxtaposition between clothes and taqwa or God consciousness, but there is an acknowledgement. There's a clear acknowledgement of what clothes is supposed to do. It's to protect you from the gaze, protect you from like the environment.
The elements, yeah.
Yeah, but it's also to beautify you. Allah could have easily created like a material that is only able to produce one color to make clothes and only in a particular shape. But no, he's like everything else, like drinks and other things in the world. He has given us so much variety.
Yes.
So this outer sculpture that you put on is a serious thing. And it's connected to the way you connect with the environment. It is connected to the previous generations because we keep referencing stuff. And it's connected to the future. So it is in a way immaterial, really, in its concept.
That's deep. I mean, and you really that's just very deep what you just said,
Yeah.
especially how man, the code it's immaterial. Yeah, man, I'm trying to articulate it like how you did.
The concept of
Yeah,
clothes, right?
the concept of clothes is immaterial.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's deep.
And that's why God says, or Allah says, and the best clothing, using the same word, libas, is the libas of the soul. And the way things run, the way we interact as human beings is through culture. It's through sort of like the materialists would say, sort of like a dialectic materialism, which is sort of the idea that there are certain objects and certain policies and things that sort of are determined and then form into like actual events, right? And it goes back and forth. It's not really the idea that well, I don't agree with it entirely, but it's sort of like an objection to the idea that everything that happens is only in our mind, right?
Yeah.
The idealist, obviously you're kind of familiar with that as well. But so this is
I kind of do believe in the whole productive tension thing,
yeah,
though. Like I can see where it has some credence.
sure. I would definitely agree with you there. And so the reason why people like ourselves, why there should be way more like Afro Africans or Muslims from all walks of life, is because everything that is being produced or created by human beings has a spirit. And I'm just being very poetic with my words. I'm not actually, don't take this literal, right? I'm just being poetic with my words. There is a spirit within the things that someone produces. And we find that whenever there's a spirit in something, it becomes revolutionary. And I was shocked when I was researching this. So I was reading about so Chinese literature, and this is the thing. This is the beauty of researching. You may research, and with the encyclopedia that we have nowadays, all these internet encyclopedias that we have nowadays, it really takes you to rabbit holes. So I was reading about Chinese literature, early 20th century Chinese literature that was sort of
Mhm.
like surrounded like the Peking University. It was sort of like a proto-modernist literature movement that was basically trying to move away from sort of like old Chinese. I don't know what the particular language for word for that is, but that was like an old Chinese sort of like script and way of writing stories that like sort of like a lot of the modernists wanted to move away from. And so the Peking University was sort of the hub of all these intellectuals. They were directly influenced by sort of like the European way of like building stories and like ideas and concepts. And there was like this case I read in Peking, and this was 1918, because 1918 there was like this like rift between the traditionalist and the modernist in China, intellectual circles, and so there was like this like a spike of suicides that were taking place. A lot of the like rebel or radical liberal students were like taking their lives away, and like there is the belief that it was directly linked to Goethe's book. Yeah, Wolfgang Goethe, German philosopher, thinker, author, who wrote this book called The Sorrow of Young Werther. And I wrote a post about this on my Facebook, and it didn't really get much traction. But I felt like this was an amazing kind of like find, right? That I wanted to share with people. And The Sorrow of Young Werther, these type of things, like the like music albums or like musicians or athletes, like they've always been great. Like from when they came onto the scene, everyone loved them. Them type of like
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
think of, yeah. So I can think of Ronaldinho. Like there's clips of Ronaldinho playing when he was a young kid. He was always great. He's always been great. And Young Werther's a bit like that. When it was released, I think in 1749, 1799, don't quote me on the dates, there a spike of suicides uh, were also recorded.
Really?
And 200 years later, the same thing happened in Peking.
Wow.
And loads of people, especially like Marxists, cite that as like the destructive force of like capitalism, because not only did people copycat the suicide rates, the suicide, because in the book, so I didn't even explain what the book was about. The book was basically about young Werther, this young guy who was fell in love with this woman, but he couldn't be with, and she had like another lover, and then he takes a gun from the lover of the, so very symbolic, he takes the gun from the then husband of the wife and kills himself.
Mm.
And then there were copycats basically doing that in 18th century Germany, and then basically 19th 20th century China. And then there was also people who start to dress like Werther. There's records of that in the 18th century. So similarly today, when you do cosplay, when you do like adventures and you
Yeah.
dress like, that was happening back then.
Wow. Over the character from a book.
Yes. And then suicide, and it went as far as suicide rates. And then Peking, obviously, it was a form of resistance and
Yeah.
protest.
Okay.
And obviously the whole romantic, because obviously Goethe being a sort of romanticist, the father of romanticism, or right. So that kind of translated really well into the whole idea of like a very convincing, very powerful language. And that happened back then. So when I read that, I was like, oh my god, this thing is bigger than I thought it was. And it's been with us for a much longer period. um so the importance can't be stressed enough. Culture shapes the world. Culture shapes the world. And if we are not what's it called, in positions where we are shaping um culture, then it's going to be very difficult. But that's not enough. And Kanye really helped me understand that it's not enough to just be a tastemaker. It's not just enough to be an athlete. It's not just enough to be artist or whatever. You also have to have um, the ability to own
Mm.
what you produce. The ownership is very, and again, Marx was right when he says that, when he talks about wages and
The means of production.
means of production, you know, he was right in that sense, and that the moment the worker is um, disconnected to the production that he produces, he loses power, and that is pretty much what happens uh, with the African American community. I'm using that as an example because since I can think, the most influential community on this earth has been the African community, hands down. African American community. There's not a other community on this earth that can compete in terms of just culture in the 20th century, and pretty much I suspect even earlier than that.
Mm.
Um, but the issue, and then you see this with like films that are based on real story, like Dreamgirls with Motown and all that history, is that the ability to own what you produce. Because there's one thing about being the image and sending particular messages, but then there's also a different aspect of like reaping um, the things financially and building infrastructure.
Mm.
So it's not really about on a superficial level of like, okay, you're a billionaire now. No, being a billionaire means you shape history, or you not you shape history, but you're able to at least put a dent into history,
Yeah, definitely.
right? That's what it means. I mean, if you, and I don't know how true this is. I've checked this and with quotations and citation as well. Abdurrahman ibn Auf, one of the 10 promised paradise, they've somehow, because I think through I think I've seen Ibn Khaldun. He had like he that was like a aspect of his book where he basically tells you what the Sahabas left behind,
Hmm.
because obviously it's quite detailed with Muslims because we have to have like everything sorted out because of the inheritance.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, the Muslims left millions behind.
Yeah,
Some Muslims left
um,
millions behind.
exactly. So apparently, Ibn Abdurrahman Auf, and I'm gonna have to double check this though. He was worth 3 billion at his time. If you were to translate this to uh, contemporary, like um, like wealth appreciation, he was worth $3 billion. And I mean, you have like a kind of an indication when you hear stories like when his caravan was coming, the floor of Medina was shaking. Aisha tells us, just by the amount of stuff that he had. Um, and he was shaping the world, or putting a dent at least into history, and co-creating situations, changing perspectives on life. Because really and truly, this also goes back to perspective. Now, culture helps to shape perspective. If you have a particular perspective about something, i.e., Muslims are terrorists, i.e., Muslims destroy everything in Afghanistan and in Syria, anything that is to do with culture, they destroy and
Mm.
sell and loot, i.e., black people um, are very poor, even though that these things may not be true, but just the fact that it's out there and there's like a critical mass that believes that shapes the way we interact with each other.
Oh, of course. Of course it does. I've
And
been.
this is why we have to be there. Because all the ideas, all the philosophy, all the religions manifest through culture.
Yep.
Culture is the mouthpiece of what is really happening in society. And if we're not involved, then what is shaping us? I mean, you look, let me show you, like, give you contrast, right? An example. Ali Dawa makes a video about Kanye West and how demonic he is, right? And
Mhm.
how like people should stay away from the music industry, right? Kanye West still enters the mosque or the masjid. Kanye West is still in the mosque, and you know how Kanye West is in the mosque? When I take my shoes off and I see his Yeezys.
Mm.
And this is where the disconnect happened. We are operating on one plane of understanding and communication, whereas the West, America, North America, Europe, blah, blah, they're operating on several channels, multiply of channels, and it's a constant stream of communication, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Levinas, the French sociologist, talks about this, and he calls this the face, which means two people interacting with each other. They're coming. So two people coming together and creating a new moment.
Mm.
Martin Buber speaks of this as well. Ishondu, this interaction between one person and the other. But what connects us immediately is culture. So this idea that culture is not important or clothing is not important. No, you have categorized yourself into the people. Oh, those people do not care about fashion or looking good. You're part of a group. You're not that unique, my man.
Yeah,
You're
straight
just
up.
that group that doesn't care. But there's another group that cares. And I believe a religion or a person who or people, we are people of beauty, right? And I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to speak from a sort of like a African American African diasporan perspective. We are people of beauty. We love beauty. You see this, the way we welcome people. If you go back to Africa, the way we welcome people, the way we welcome people in Harlem. There's this guy called Hood Vlogs. He goes through all the hoods in America.
Yeah.
And honestly, these are always regarded like the worst areas, right? Per se. But bro, these are always, they tend to be the most welcome communities. It's
Mm.
it's it's baffling. So we are and hospitality and sharing and giving. It's all part of like an aesthetic that goes down to beauty and truth. And if we are not concerned about these things, if we're concerned about it in a sort of imbalanced way, so it's the kuffar, la ilaha illallah on one side, but being Western, you're not aware of who Moby Dick is. You're not aware of, like, this idea that someone, I'm anti-colonial, hence I do not learn anything about the colonial masters. Even if you were to look, even if you were to go down that path, which I personally don't really find attractive, nor do I find it
Yeah, yeah.
conclusive with like how history works,
Me neither.
I would say, listen, at least learn what the master has done. Learn to understand it better than him, and not learn to dismantle only.
Yeah, exactly. Straight up.
Right. And this is why, and I could give you millions of reasons why it's so important for us, for people of color especially. And I don't know if that's a controversial term. I mean, these terms change all the time. For the lack of a better term, people of color, we have to be involved in this because um, the stuff that our ancestors have produced has been McDonaldized and Hollywoodized for such a long time, and narratives have been told. And I'm so glad and unfortunate, as actually, with sort of the death of the brother last year. What was his name again? Very tragic death that was recorded. How come
Uh,
right?
uh,
It kickstarted off the protest during lockdown.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
George Floyd.
George Floyd. Yep.
Yeah. So that has really it's not that George Floyd kickstarted this. Remember, I was telling you, when Virgil was appointed creative designer of Louis Vuitton. That was just a ricochet effect of what was happening in 2014 in Flint, not Flint. What was the place again? Not Georgetown.
Ferguson was
Ferguson. Yeah, Ferguson, Missouri. Yeah, that was just a ricochet effect of that.
oh yeah, it was building.
Right. So George Floyd was not the origin of what we are seeing today. Where we are living, at least aesthetically, in a very interesting place. And you saw recently that Disney released this film that was written and almost 100% cast of Chinese Americans. I think Shang Li it was called or something. And it was breaking records. It was breaking records. So the capitalists have realized that culture in its entirety is more profitable.
Mm.
You and again, this was again, guys. I can only speak from my perspective, but this was really in the back of like things like Wakanda that a lot of people like to sort of meme. You know, Wakanda, yeah. But Wakanda was the highest grossing film ever.
Yeah.
And similarly, like in the 60s, look, just for a second, right? The progress, and I see it as progress. I know there's a lot of naysayers, but to me, that was progress, what was happening in the 60s in the civil rights movement, which was spearheaded by African Americans, which then in turn influenced the Chicano movement. It influenced the Chinese American movement. It
The gay.
influenced the Native American movement. It influenced the mafia. The mafia was involved in the civil rights movement. The Italian mafia was involved in the civil rights movement. And it all spearheaded by this one community again, the most influential community to the state in the modern period, the African American community. And similarly, Wakanda did the same thing on a commercial level for all these films to be accepted now. You know, so I'm not speaking here for the capitalist, but I'm saying Shang-Li, Wakanda, all these things, it's all to do with culture. Because the one thing that Shang-Li makes it so different from any other films Hollywood has produced that had Asian actors like Rush Hour or something like that was that it was a unique story told by its own people. And I feel like this is where we're going. And because it is also, and this is my last point on why we should be involved, and this is the strongest point, and it goes back to the Quran. In Surah Al-Hujarat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, and I'm paraphrasing, I have created you in male and female, biologically speaking, and I've created you in tribes and nations so that you may know one another. And the best among you are those in piety. This is the basis on why you should be involved in culture and you should be going in, trying to teach, trying to learn.
Mm.
Because in that dialecticism, right, this dialectic approach, give and take, you might find piety. Society increases and turns into a better society if there's more actors, more voices involved. If we are constantly at the, and I'm not using victim mentality, I don't like that term, but if we are constantly just on attack or like this whole anti-colonial project, I don't think anything is going to change. We have to convince the hearts and souls. We have to convince the hearts and souls. Look at what Dave Chappelle did. They tried to cancel him. Okay. They tried to cancel Dave Chappelle. But they underestimated again the will of history. The will of history, which goes beyond of like groups and like policies, and the will of history dictates there is still a critical mass of people who fell in love with who Dave Chappelle is over the years. And it does not matter what you say to those people, they will not abandon him. Similarly, if there's people, demagogues, right, politicians, strategists, plotting, it does not matter what they do. If people love Muslims, if people love Black people, and if people love each other, and this is really what it comes down to, as cheesy as it sounds, if all these things are happening and conversations are happening, if I'm talking to my neighbor and I'm taking his packaging if he's not around, and I help him.
Dawuud, I think your mic is breaking up a bit.
Or is it still breaking up? Can you hear me now?
It got a little bit better.
Okay, sorry. Well, if these things are taking place, so I was trying to say, if we are all communicating and exchanging and doing this, learn from each other, then it's going to be very difficult for like people to come and cut the connection that is supposed to make us better. So it's not love for love's sake, but it's love to understand.
I had to leave and come back. It was mine. It was on my side.
Yeah, I was just saying it's not just love for the sake of love, because Nabil Abdul Rashid, he again, incredible human. He kind of memifies that, love for the sake of love. It's not love for the sake of love. It's love for the sake of understanding each other, because through understanding, something special is going to happen. And I always say this, and I've said this plenty of times. I would say sort of the UK or London is sort of like the future, on how like society, like the world could be, and what's going to happen in the future, just because of like the mix of like connections and people and etc. Yeah, but I think I don't know if I was able to for 40 minutes trying to answer that question.
I think you did a really good job. I'm surprised how you were able to compact point 2, 3, and 4 all together within like 30 minutes, while number 1 was like an hour and 30 minutes. But no, it was good. I'm actually shocked that you had so much to say behind these points. You must have been thinking about this for Virgil only died, passed away, a few days ago, but it seemed like it's been on your mind for a while. And I think Virgil's death kind of just kick-started it, or kicked it off.
Yeah, 100%, man, 100%. And I'm so thankful that you allowed me. We had this conversation for a very long time to have this this podcast, but I feel like Virgil's passing really, really just made it way more meaningful to have this conversation and possibly do more of this stuff.
No, definitely, man, because I really wanted to get into from Black African diasporans, why it's vital for us to have many academics as artists and directors in creative industry. Because that's something I heard something from I think it was an Iranian scholar saying that, in the early years of Islam, the conquest is what kind of spread the thing around, and then after the conquest died down, you got things like jurisprudence, theology help it spread and enter different territories. But now we're living in a different age where, the stuff that penetrates might not be, of course, the days of empire are over, or at least the one where you forcibly go in and take. And, jurisprudence, theology, I don't think any new developments are going to come from there. The only thing left that hasn't really been tapped into by religious communities, and maybe let's say the Muslim religious community, is the multimedia art, those ways of expressing ideas or yourself. I think that hasn't really been tapped into by religious communities, or if it hasn't by ours.
100%, 100%. I feel like even Christian communities have struggled. I mean, you probably know about this, like the Christian hip hop industry in America. I don't know how it's viewed over there, but I always have the impression that it's not viewed with high regard in terms of artistry and stuff like that.
No, it's not. It's not. It's from what I've heard of it, it's very corny. I mean, you're
Yeah.
probably better. I think they did a better with Christian rock
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
than they did with because Christian rock they kind of made it very poppy, add
Yeah.
some religious references in it, but still kind of talk about existential
Yeah.
things. Yeah, so I think Christian rock has better success than any other Christian thing trying to kind of cross pollinate or
Yeah.
incorporate, or as you said, borrow,
Yeah.
or sample.
Yeah.
But yeah, but for the most part, I'm not too interested in. I like gospel. I grew up in church, but I rather keep things in that sense separate where they
Yeah.
belong. I rather have my rap. I rather have my music kind of. I don't know. I think there's a certain way of doing it. I think Kanye West is getting
I,
tapping into it.
I was just about to say that. I feel like Kanye has or is on the brink of really understanding how to do that tastefully on a really high level and still have biblical sort of references. But I must say though, I would say that Electronica has been doing it for like so long. Right?
Yeah, his most recent album, what I believe came out last year, ADPTA or something like that.
Yes, yes. I
All
mean,
praise due to Allah. Yeah, that I think that yeah, I like that album. I don't know if that's the name of the album, but I do
yeah, it
remember
is. It
that
is. It
song.
is. It is.
Okay, yeah. No. I think he did a really nice blend
Yeah, it
himself
was.
with that.
Yeah, it was crazy. Even like recently with, and I was telling this to Ali Dawa. I was like, because we're talking about Kanye, right? Because he did a video on it. I was like, and I think he did a bit of a background research after because he kind of doubled down on this like on salt after. He's like, oh yeah, he was doing that because of that and that, and but yeah, I was telling him about how J Electronica like casually just references El Toro. You know what I mean? On a like it's just amazing. This is the stuff that I really kind of live for, man. To see references like re-emerging somewhere else. And for those who don't know, Etoro is like this like smash hits, um, pop and what is it? Opera? No, soap, drama
Yeah,
soap.
Turkish soap, yeah,
Yeah, that comes up.
Osman's
Yes,
father,
yeah,
Earth
which is
Blue.
sort of like the origins of the Ottomans, and it's been extremely popular across the globe. And sort of J Electronica, he mentions that something along the lines of like grew up at the mountain hill at the mountaintop like El Toro or something like that. And yeah, that's powerful stuff there, man. You know, that one sentence could like change someone's life. Wallahi, I'm not lying to you. I know friends of mine who are Muslim now. And when I say they're Muslim now, they're obviously responsible, more thoughtful human beings, right? That's what I mean by that. Um, who listen to Rakim and Eric B. And
Mhm.
that was their entry point to Islam.
Oh yeah, I've heard that from a lot of people. I've heard that from people definitely.
So that's to me, it's crazy. Is it you just don't know what will be impactful? And I feel like the Russian author um, wrote a book called "What Is Art." Um, what's his name? Oh man, I have all these names in my head, and it's just sometimes I just takes a while um to pick. Was it not Dostoevsky? It was Leo Tolstoy.
Oh,
Tolstoy.
really? Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was thinking of his name too.
yeah, Tolstoy. So he wrote this book called "What Is Art," and I think it's a very good attempt to explain what art is. And him, obviously being Christian, he's kind of like very sort of like laser focused. He says, "Well, art is first of all, it has to be kind of Christian art, but then secondly, it has to um, invoke uh, good feelings in someone." And I feel like the Greeks had a very good definition of what art is as well, dismissing obviously some forms of art and elevating some other forms of art. I think Aristotle or Plato, one of the two, they weren't really fond of like poetry,
Mm.
and because that they were very heavily invested in sort of realism, right? Neoplatonic realism. But Um, yeah. So what is art, right? What is art? And he says, well, art is something. Leo Tolstoy says, art is something that is supposed to motivate you to do good. And there's one of like Kanye West's songs, and this is actually not really going back to Tolstoy. There has been Muslim scholars who argued for this. They said like they actually believe that there is a possibility for music to make you more religious. That's quite crazy. And I can resonate to that. To be honest,
Yeah,
I
I
can
think
really
I came to a bit. I came to myself.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. So it has to be accessible. Um, and look at so amazing things that Tolstoy says. So he says things like, um, so the artificiality of it. So you borrow from something, imitation, effectfulness, diversion. All these ideas are super important. And like I said, I've been on this journey on like, okay, I want to be a contributor to society because there's a hadith that again, there are so many maxims that I have in my head that drive what I do. And
Mm.
like this maxim, for example, this hadith where the prophet says, the best among you are those who benefit society the most or benefit their community the most, are the
Oh
best
yeah,
among.
and I can think of numerous of these just to attach to that one. About
Yes.
better to engage with society, being
Yes.
separate
Yeah.
yourself from. I'm just paraphrasing, but it's better to
Yes.
engage with society and have trouble than
Yes.
separate yourself and
Yes.
not.
Exactly.
Basically.
Exactly. Yeah, that's an amazing hadith as well.
You
And
know, and then
but
you can see that in the story of Jonah.
yes.
He didn't want to
Yes.
do what he was sent to do. He was like, man, forget these people, I'm out.
Yes.
He was like,
100%.
nah,
100%.
that's not what's best for you. He's either
Yeah.
that or the whale. So
Yeah. And you know what? I'm like, um, and how can I be the best or how can I be a contribution to society if I have nothing to offer? If there's no substance to me, right? And retaining humility. I mean, that's one of the reasons. Like, loads of people ask me because obviously I was sort of like at the genesis of like so what we know today as like the online Dawa crew. So this is Dawa man, Imran, Ali Dawa, and all these people who are still very close friends to me. People ask me, why have you never gone down the path of like having a YouTube channel? And I asked myself that question many times. And it really boils down to I never felt like I was good enough to be there and do and talk. It would have been just fluff. And slowly now I'm starting to feel a bit more comfortable. Like that's 6 7 years in of like just tirelessly, inquisitively looking and looking everywhere. I had this idea. Unfortunately, this is what happens with some of us when we get into the religion. We are told that we are not supposed to look elsewhere.
yeah, I was told that too.
Yeah, and deep down that never set well with me. I was like, I'm sorry guys, I can't. I've signed up for the program called Islam, but like this thing that you're trying to sign me up for, it's going to make me ill.
Straight up.
Going back to my name, Kangudi, the artist. I can't. I'm sorry. May Allah forgive me if I do go to places that I'm not supposed to be, but that's just me. That's just who I am, and I can't help but look for like
You
I,
know,
I want to know why Nietzsche is such a bad person. I want to know why. Um,
yeah, I know. It's better off if you didn't want me to know. It's better off you don't even tell me about these people because it's gonna
exactly,
make me curious.
exactly, right, right, and honestly, um, this is I'm not basically giving a green light to anyone to just go and do like just the digging. I've been like Muslim now for almost 15 years, and I spent a lot of time um educating myself, being educated, making mistakes and things like that before I was able to sort of like even dig into sort of like different traditions.
Hmm.
And I think university really, really helped me. Strangely, a lot of people look down on university, but it did help me. Cultural historical studies was like year one and year two, and that really helped me to sort of like formalize and approach research in a very sort of like non-biased way, and
I'll second
understanding.
that. I'd second that too, because I only went
Yeah.
back to uni as when I became Muslim, because all the
Ah,
other Muslims I hung out with were, uni graduates and
yeah.
college educated and stuff like that. So I was like, man, let me enroll myself in some classes, you know.
Nice.
So, but yeah, that's kind of what kind of got me where I really learned how to research and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It helped me. I don't have no negative opinion about Western education or
Same.
uni.
Same.
So I
Same.
think
Same.
everything is just what the intentions you go in. And also, I went back when I was a little bit older. Maybe I was a little more focused, knew what I wanted to do.
Yes. Yes. The same.
So
The same. Yeah, it's the same with me as well. Um, but yeah, so this is sort of like at the basis. So Virgil's story is sort of kind of my story as well, because we're in a strange way interconnected somehow. And obviously, I've been doing Mizan since 2014, and it's been a tough kind of. It's been very tough doing this, because like the first few years, if you don't have any links or any like cloud or proximity to cloud, you have to basically convince people that you're not, this is not just a hobby and you're serious about it. And I think about 4 years, 5 years in, people are going to start taking you serious. For anyone who wants to start doing this is basically how long it's potentially going to take you, especially for people who take it more serious. And yeah, everything that I've talked about, I'm trying to basically incorporate into the brand Mizan. Mizan meaning the scale.
and I still want to talk to you about your brand. I know this talk was more
Yeah, I
so
think we could do
Virgil.
this maybe for another time, more in detail. Um,
Oh yeah, we
because
definitely don't have time today.
yeah, because
Right.
I feel like we've done quite a lot today. Um, but yeah, just very quickly, it's just, I mean, Mizan means scale, and again, it was a spiritual inspiration. I've already talked about the verse early on, which is actually funnily, it's the verse that I mentioned about clothing being uh, protection from the gaze and the environment, but also beautification and akin to the spiritual aspect of like God consciousness. Um, the verse actually is in a chapter called Al Araf, which means the heights. And the funny thing about the heights is that we believe that on the day of judgment, there's going to be people who are going to be neither condemned to, well, immediately, right? Won't be condemned to hell, nor will they be condemned to paradise, and judgment will be passed. So they will be sort of put on a back burner, a bit what Dante talks about what's that level that he talks about?
Purgatory?
Yeah, but it's not like that. It's slightly different. But I mean, for our Christian viewers who may not be familiar with what I'm
Yeah, they're
trying to,
probably gonna feel like that.
yeah. So the heights Al Araf, and there's this thing called, there's going to be, so there's like people, some scholars who actually believe that there's going to be a scale, and that scale is going to measure those individuals and the deeds they've performed, and then some people take it more symbolic, but that scale I
Yeah,
was
I think their bodies take it symbolic. I don't think they believe it's a literal scale.
okay.
It symbolizes, it represents something.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's why I wanted to be on the safe side and just mention both opinions. um, yeah, and I was really influenced by. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Everything makes sense. The verse that I'm inspired by is in the chapter that talks about people who are going to be weighed by this like metaphysical scale or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And that was boom, that was the birth of Mizan. And then I was just like trickling it down, and I wrote a manifesto on it as well. Because remember, I came sort of from like the Dawa scene, and I was really, as a like, how would you say Dawa in English? Like missionary, not
Yeah,
missionary. Yeah,
proselytizing.
yeah, I was involved a lot in that. And then I was very, I took more sort of like behind the scenes position. So I would write more on write scripts for the films that we would do and the movies we'd do. So I came more from a literary background.
Okay.
Uh, so like the first thing I did was not design a T-shirt, but I wrote a manifesto. And that was sort of like the basis on like of Mizan. So like measuring, because like humans are obsessed with measuring. We measure time, we measure weight, um we measure markets, we measure heights. Females do, at least. We're obsessed with this calculus, right? It's everywhere. So, and I was like, okay, let's measure things that aren't necessarily measurable. I don't know if that makes sense, but like things like art and love, and you can't really measure them. But let's see how much of it we can put on that imaginary scale and support people. So that's why I don't know if Clem is still in here. If he is, much love to you. If not, then he's probably going to watch it later. But like people like Clem, for example, people like yourself, um, people like Astrid in Germany, people like my wife, all these people have had an impact on me and helped me to formalize this project, and it's an ongoing project. And Virgil has really taken this to the highest heights. I'm not necessarily want to follow that same path, but
But you can
nevertheless,
take inspiration from it.
yes, correct. Yeah, man. And like and obviously I've been trying to do loads of things. So I've been working with Jabi Studios. We've been doing like this series called uh, Daily Routines. So it's like sort of like a very fresh new way of like advertising slash art slash communication slash ideas slash concepts, because I feel like they're all connected. And like,
I like the filter you use.
pardon?
On the one where the picnic blanket one. I like the
Yes,
filter at the end.
yes.
I like that cutscene, to be honest, bro. Like
Yeah, thanks, my bro. Thanks, my
how it,
bro.
yeah, we was walking, dude say something to you like, man, what you talking about? And then walk down the stairs, boom,
Yeah, yeah.
chilling on the picnic blanket.
Yes, yes,
That,
yes,
that,
yes.
that filter killed it too.
Yeah, 100%. So it kind of it goes back to what I was trying to say. So I have a couple of like aims, and this is something we can really talk about next time. But I have like certain goals and aims with Mizan, what I want to achieve, and one of them is to find like sort of the connection between pros and close. This goes a shout out to my boy Munir. He helped me formulate this slogan, pros and close, because I strangely find that there are loads of similarities between clothing and literature. And yeah, we're basically trying to do that with like that series, Daily Routines. For those who don't know, it's on Mizan LMT Instagram. Please do have a look. And it's basically just a series, 15, 16 seconds long, very TikTok-ish, trying to encapsulate clothing in an everyday situation.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I do got one question though before we take off, because I
sure.
was going to ask this early on, but I don't want to divert to it. But now, so what's up with Japanese denim? What's the craze? Why so popular?
What, Japanese dinner?
Yeah, denim.
Denim. Oh, well, that's the thing with the Japanese, and I happen to know a bit about that. Japanese, man, I don't know why I always have to do this, but I'm about to open like a whole new history chapter. But it is, unfortunately, it is. I mean, it is connected. I can't help. So the Japanese obviously experienced like a very traumatic experience with Hiroshima, and then sort of like everything pre Hiroshima basically gets almost destroyed. And it's not just, and this is again one of the reasons why culture is so important, because when the atomic bomb dropped on Japan, it didn't just kill human beings, it killed everything that Japanese thought they were,
Hmm.
including being children of a literal god, right? That maniac who is like the head of state. But it literally destroyed everything, or destroyed everything. And similarly to what happened in Germany, American soft power becomes extremely strong in Japan. So a lot of the Japanese are grew up in a sort of post-world world where culture is dictated, inspired by Americana.
Mm.
So denims, boots. You find like we're friends on Facebook. You see me posting all these like black and white images all the time, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
yeah. And I do this. This is like a hobby of mine. And you, if you want, like if you type in like 1960 or 1950 Japan biker gangs, you find like these images of like Japanese and like denims and like they they don't have Harley Davidsons, but they have like their whatever they were like sort of on, and I think like the Yakuza as well and things like that. And so the Japanese are very fond of American culture. That's really what it comes down to. But the differences with other people, say for example the Germans, is that the Japanese are just like such a handcraft society. They're so deeply entrenched in the arts of making things, and when they make stuff, they make it like the best. So they imitate the best. It's not they imitate and then elevate the situation, and that's what Japanese have done with like um Americana. So the best denims are from Japan, literally. You still there, my bro? Yeah, I don't know if you can still hear me. Yeah, I should be back now, I think, in a minute. Again, for those who've listened for this long, for 2 hours, honestly, I'm ashamed that you guys um, are listening to a fool like myself. I'm just joking. Um, but yeah, I'm deeply touched by this man. Um, and like I said, I've been saying this to people who like sort of mess with Mizan as well. Like we're part of a bigger community. Tehran, you're part of that community. Clem is part of that community. Astrid is part of that community, and it's a real alternative. Uh, and I feel like at this point, this is what we have to offer. We have to offer an alternative to what is out there, and I think it's very necessary for us to build infrastructure that is autonomous. We may have links to certain other like communities and industries, whatever, but it's very important that we build our own industry, and like the internet will allow us to do that in a very sustainable way where there is no middleman no more, and it's really us and the people.
Hey, and that's what I be trying to tell some of these academics that I
Yes,
interview.
thank
Hey,
you, thank
it's
you.
just me and you. We don't you don't have to
Yeah,
wait for no publisher. You don't have to wait for no university
yes.
lecture course. You know, you can either get with content creators or you can create your own content. And
Honestly, Tehran, I feel like you're such a futurist as well, and there's so many ways on a very deep level I can connect with you as well, and I feel like it's also to do with like something very emotional, the passing of Isa last year.
yeah,
um
man, because I was actually feeling that brother a lot more as I was watching him grow. Because I was
yes,
a bit standoffish because he had a Salafi. I
yeah,
thought he had a Salafi more mindset methodology, and I was
yeah,
moving away from that. And so, I kind
yes,
of had like a bit disgust for that type of way of thinking.
yeah,
But our interactions, seeing how he was questioning even his own beliefs, I was like, man, this brother's on
exactly,
his way to something. And
yes, exactly, exactly, exactly.
I still sit back and I think about Issa to this day from time to time.
Wow,
Recently, just
wow,
because of the impact he had on so many other people, not just because of that, he had an
yeah,
impact on me as well, but the impact he had on other people was powerful. Um,
yes,
Seeing
yes,
even frequenting certain platforms on YouTube, I would
yes.
see people mentioning him and spoke nothing good about him. He had
Nothing
spoken,
but good. Yeah,
yeah, nothing but good about him.
yeah,
Uh,
and sorry, my bro, go ahead.
no, it was just it's just a beautiful thing to see. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
100%, 100%. And I sort of I group you into that. You're my peer. You see, you're my brother. You're my peer. You're my companion, my digital companion.
Yeah, likewise.
You're
Well,
you're so
I ain't too far. We're in the same country. It's only like
yes,
from
yes.
San Francisco to LA, the way I calculated.
Basically, and yeah, I'm super happy with like what you're doing as well. It's so powerful, and the fact that you already, you know what you just said about the academics. If I probably had a conversation, probably would have like told them the same. I've been trying to convince like a friend of mine, creator Jamie, that we should have just built us, because she has the same issues as well about like getting funds and like institutions, etc. You can do this by yourself, and I think Jordan Peterson, you know, you as much as people love to he's done it.
Yeah.
He's literally done it. He gets 1 million views on a lecture. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
he does. He can go on somebody else's and get 1 million or at least 500,000. You know what I'm saying? On their
Yeah,
own platform. So
yeah, yeah, that's powerful stuff, and I think you can replicate that. You just have to find the right formulas to do so.
yeah, definitely. I mean, but they're out there though. I mean, we just have to utilize, and like you said, man, I think creating a network of people, a community of like-minded people moving in the same direction, where you can help each other,
Yeah,
lean on each other if you need to. I can't do everything. Maybe
yeah,
Dawuud can, or Dawuud can't do everything. Maybe I can.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I see that's where the future goes. Hopefully, it doesn't just stay on some digital. I think the digital thing is powerful, but it just shouldn't stay there.
Yeah, no, no, it shouldn't. It shouldn't. And that's why you're so right with this, because this is one of the reasons why pop-ups has been so integral to the Mizan, the whole Mizan project. And like the last pop-up we did was organized by High Peace, which is like an extraordinary brand, and sort of like doing similar things that I do and have like sort of similar philosophy. And they organized it like back in July, and this was like just at the opening of like the lockdown. And then people came from my community, people from High Peace community, and they were interacting, exchanging numbers, and oh man, it was so powerful. And I was like, wow, this stuff is real. It's not just digital, it's actually real.
It has to, because you know what? Some people don't even move, don't even mess with people. Hey, there's people I talk to all the time. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? I'm friends with on Facebook. They don't like not a single one of my posts. They don't.
yeah,
They'll tell you straight up, bro. I don't get with people who I know personally online like that. Online is for people I can't reach. If I can reach, so
yeah,
basically, what I'm trying to say is like, man, some people move better or are more willing to engage face to face. They might get the
yeah,
information from online to
yeah,
stay informed, but when it comes to really putting themselves out there, they rather do it on a personal. Okay, I see you. I'm able to talk to you,
yeah.
not just typing through. Which I have no problem typing to people as well, but I need both engagements.
So
I need engagement.
have you ever thought about like, and I totally agree with you there as well. Have you ever thought about engaging with sort of the creative scene in Manchester or up north in general? Because there's loads of culture there too.
No, yeah, there's a lot of culture up here. I just, I'm just not really. I mean, outside of the Muslim community, I really
Yeah,
don't associate with, and the Muslims I associate with aren't really tapped into that scene.
yeah, and
So,
yeah, yeah, I hear that. I was in a very similar position as yourself, and I guess I was kind of privileged to have had friends who were one my age, sort of grew up on the same stuff as. I mean, just off record, right? Dawa man and like Dawa man grew up on live Hennings, R&B and LA Cool J and stuff like that. So there was a level of like connection we had culturally and spiritually, right? So that made it more easier for me to kind of transition back to the creative industry. But I would say the sooner the better, bro. I mean, you're doing it already with sort of the academic community, and trust me, bro, you're trailblazing, you're Virgiling, you're upblowing yourself in the in the academic industry, and
I mean, I really
that's,
wish people know why I even started looking at acting because
Yeah.
This is the Facebook I have now is I've only had for a couple years, but I've been on
Okay.
Facebook for like since 2010.
Okay.
And so if you look at my posts 2013 when I converted to 2018 when I deactivated that, man, all I used to read was traditional works. Quote Muhammad Ibn Abdul Wahhab, Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn al-Qayyim, Tafsir, Ibn Kathir, all of that, and
Yeah.
people used to give me crap like, oh, you need to be more. And so I started looking into the academic side of things, but I was introduced to it by an anti-Islamic polemicist guy who had a YouTube channel called Sneakers Corner.
In-
I think he got inspired by Speaker's Corner. It was a Danish guy. He called his channel Sneakers Corner, and
Interesting.
he would just use and he would just analyze Islam via the works of academics, and starting with like Dan Brown, not was it is it Dan or Dan Gibson and stuff like that. And I was like, man, this guy is I didn't know how to take it at first, so I started just reading these people's works too. Then I started to discover that, hey man, the way that this guy is interpreting these people's works isn't exactly how these people are saying it in their book themselves.
Interesting.
And so then I started reading more academic, and then I'm like, okay, these people, their work isn't that bad. They're quoting traditional sources. Yeah, they might okay, yeah, they're bringing all of the sources and putting it out on the table and seeing, okay, well, these two things can't be and that, but they are using traditional sources. So I don't know, it kind of got me, and I was like, well, let me investigate this more. I didn't see too many Muslims doing it, so I was like, okay, in order to see what's true and what's false from what the anti-Islamic polemicists are saying, and I don't know, I kind of took a liking to it, and
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of my lane a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. I guess it's so funny again, going back to this 100 monkey phenomena. Or I guess there is a trajectory for like people who accept Islam in the West. There's a certain way how things go, and like, we are not that unique in that sense that we go through like a regiment of like ideas and like communities in particular as well. And that same thing happened to me. You
Yeah,
know, I still, for some, at least some scholars, I still have much love for them, and for others, it's less. Not love. I obviously have love for every Muslim, but I mean, I engage less with their work because I just feel like there's nothing for me there. Um, but like, I went through the exact same thing as well. You
mm.
know, I was at once, convinced that the moment I memorized Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab and Imam Babahari and this and that, I'll be good.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
then I had a friend of mine called Hassan Bjorn. Hassan Bey.
yeah.
Yeah, and he was sort of like always like 10 years ahead of me or something like that because he had gone through all of that stuff, being a Salafi himself, and then obviously you met him, very bright, intelligent guy.
Yeah.
He put me on this, like looking at Islam from a slight different perspective, and being more open minded and stuff, and that kind of helped me early, like mid time of me being a Muslim, to just be like a bit more like I always wanted to know, okay, the Romans, and then I wanted to know about the orators of the Romans, Seneca and all. I was like, man, I'm sure they have something to say. But I'm also interested in really what Confucius was to say, or the Buddha, or Dojin, the Zen Buddhist, and similarly with like African like thinkers and stuff like that. So I feel like, yeah, you're just enriching yourself, man. Like I said, you have to be a bit more systematic with this. You can't just go ahead and just read everything, or engage in everything. You should have your point of view, or even if it's not your point of view, but you should have like a form of a foundation that you kind of can like um sit on, because otherwise everything is so flimsy, and you're you're not supposed to grapple with ideas or with situations when you are learning.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
You're supposed to learn. The grappling happens at a particular point, when you're more advanced and when you're more, when you can be critical of yourself. But whilst you're learning, you're not going to be critical of yourself. You're going to take everything that the person tells you that you kind of look up to or trust.
And that's probably where I'm at right now, and why in some of, because I feel bad in some of my interviews why I don't push back on some of the stuff that I hear from the people I'm interviewing. But it's like I'm really right now just trying to take all of it in, and I do
Yeah.
have my own opinions about what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a time and a place for it. And
Thank
right
you.
now
Thank
I
you.
think I just need to soak everything up and
Yeah.
learn and kind of not put my foot in my mouth like I usually do,
Yeah.
typically do. And because I tend to go off the deep end too
Yeah.
quick, too fast. Like,
Yeah.
when I first became Muslim, man, I was mufti like a couple months in,
Yeah. I feel
you know.
like Joe Rogan, he did it the best. He literally did the whole student, like inquisitive, wanting to learn, what to now like debasing a whole news channel recently with the vaccination debacle. You know, he's turned into like this extremely erudite uh, pundit. He is
But
he
and
is
then look
more.
at his first ones though. That's what kind of gives me the inspiration. It's not what he's doing now, but what he was doing before. Because
Yeah.
he used to interview people at look like a cafeteria round table,
Okay.
with yeah, man. I was watching his old pop from like 8, 10 years. Yeah, man. They weren't they were like on par with what I'm doing right now. You know what I'm saying?
Interesting.
So
Interesting.
but then you see the evolution. I mean, you can look at you can take Kevin Samuels.
Yeah.
Kevin
Yeah.
Samuels, you look at what he was talking about and the way he dressed, 3 years ago, different than the where he's at today. But you keep at it, you get better, you learn little tricks of the trade,
Yeah.
add
Yeah.
them, implement. So
100%. I feel like what you're doing is so vital and is so far ahead. And like this is something I've learned with my fashion as well. Sometimes is that I've been doing I'll be designing something, for example, and I'll be like, I really mess with the vision. I really mess with the way it looks. But then I put it out or I show some people and they're like, oh yeah, it's cool, but it's like I couldn't be wearing that. And I'm
mm,
telling you, 2 years down the line, people are like, bro, do you still got that piece?
yeah, that's how you got to think though. You got to think for time. You got to think for the future. And a
Yes.
lot of my content I make is not trying to clout chase behind what's popular or what
Yeah.
everybody else. Because there's been interviews people said that I should take up, maybe like the variant Quran thing, but it's like everybody's doing that right now, and then with
Yeah.
being hot,
Yeah.
your numbers, you're not going to do any numbers on the video. I don't get paid for it anyway, but just looking at it from a numbers perspective,
Yeah.
man, you can do something today, record something today that isn't as popular, whatever, isn't gaining too much traction. Nobody knows about it, but give it some time. Something might kick. I can give you an example. Like who's
Mhm.
that Muslim metaphysician guy. He did a expose or a refutation on Abdullah Galadari's interview with some Christians.
Yeah.
I did an interview with Abdullah Galadari a couple months ago,
Yeah.
before Jake did that expose video.
Yeah.
Now, since he did that video, I look at the numbers at my video. I got
Wow.
extra 100. It's not a whole lot. I'm not getting paid for. I'm just looking at it from an analytical point. I got an extra 100 views. A couple of days after he did the expose on
Yeah.
the, and same thing with Raza Rizvi when Suna Defense picked up I didn't really, I'm not gonna say I didn't, I wasn't aware of that interview at first. It was dropped on me, spare of the moment, and so I didn't think much of it, and it did all right first week or two, whatever. But then when Sooner Defense picked it up, then it shot up. You know, so basically
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say, you want to make content or do things that is going to, okay, maybe not be relevant right now, or if it is relevant right now, that's cool too, but will also be relevant in the future or gain traction, you know.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And like I said, my bro, like the whole dimension that you're introducing now, the whole cultural thing. I think it's so powerful because you can come from like so many angles. It's just endless. Honestly, it's like I said, it just takes a bigger YouTuber or someone with an influential person to like pick up. These type of things could come up at someone's feed,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Who's a bit more influential, if you like, and he becomes a fan and he listens to it like for a very long time. And then one time he's like, "Bro, would you mind me being on the show?" Like things like that happen all the time on like in the social media world. So
Yeah,
I'm
but really, man, I want to create a network of people moving the same, you know, create
yeah,
not even content creator, but people
yeah,
creators, period. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? People
yes,
who are
yes,
trying
yes.
to put something out there, some type of I can't articulate it right now, but you know, I think it's important to have a community of people who you can work with.
100%, 100%, and I'm all for it. And 2022 is going to give us more opportunities, and there's big plans I've planned, like physical, where people have to actually attend physical. This is, I think, is going to be to date the biggest thing I've ever done. It's going to be very powerful,
Yeah,
inshallah.
let me know, man. If you could let me know ahead of time, I can always get to
Yes,
some places in England, no problem.
yes, 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 bro. You come down, man. You stay with us. Um, but yeah, there's more to come, and we have to interact loads. And I always try with your posts on Facebook. I know it sounds so futile, but this is really where it starts. This is where it starts. This is where you build your audience. This is where you constantly. I always send you an interview where the alchemist is interviewed. The producer, the alchemist,
Yeah, yeah.
and I've sent it now to like 3 or 4 people who are also makers and doers and creatives, and they were all like flabbergasted. They're like, "Raw, bro, I can relate so much to him."
Yeah, send that to me then,
I
because
will
I
send that to you
stuff
for
like that
sure.
give me juice.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, man, I think we're approaching like the 3 hour mark. Another
Yeah,
30
yeah, it's
minutes.
too about 240, way longer than I expect. But hey, every conversation I have with you, I enjoy it thoroughly.
Yeah,
I'm glad that we were able to get this out the way. But I feel like we're still lacking because there's a lot more I want to know about
yeah,
concerning the band, your objectives, the direction, your vision, where you do you see yourself going
sure.
with this? And yeah, man. I mean, I have nothing but time. I need to organize my time. My time management skills are horrible. I'm more
Yeah,
like wake up, kill, wake up, just do what I know I need to get done, and but now I'm like, okay, now I got to organize things. Certain time of day I do this, and that's a bit difficult for me. So I'm learning.
sure, sure. But I'll be promoting this stuff on my social media uh platforms as well. And
Yeah, likewise too, man. I want to promote. That's why I wanted to interview you on my platform to promote
yeah,
your damn thing. I see how much work you put into it.
yeah.
Um, with what I have going, I just wanted to try to help you put your stuff out there.
Thank you, thank you. Really, really appreciate that. And yeah, I think it's good. I think it's a podcast format, so 2 hours, man. Come on. Uh,
Yeah,
I'm sure it's like standard at this time. But yeah, man. Thank you very much, my bro.
yeah, no problem, man. Anytime, and we'll set something up and have another one. You know, we need to do this on the regular. Few
Yes,
other
I agree.
people we need to
I
do this
agree.
on the regular with.
I agree. I
It'd be
agree.
interesting to get. I was, you know, I wanted to watch more about Claire and because I only seen a bit of when she was there, but
Yeah.
I thought that whole speaker's corner, her being there you know, think she. Anyway, I'm not gonna ramble on. Maybe we can all get a few of y'all on a panel and discuss
Yeah.
something. We all have some
Yeah.
very different perspectives.
There's actually this young kid called Raz, right? And he's like, wow, honestly, he is like really on what we're doing. The
Hmm.
only thing is he's like 10 years younger than us.
Okay,
And
man, he's the future then. You know, because
yeah,
sometimes
and
I feel like,
he would love to like, because he's like, he use conversation or talking as an art. It's like you can tell it's an art form for him. And he's like, so young kid, I think Pakistani background possibly, and he did he got picked up for like film festivals and stuff like that. So he's a
Mm.
director as well. He's currently in Germany, but he is such a like he inspired me so much. So I'll talk to him, man, to bring him on as well. He would be so interesting to talk to because he's really kind of he knows his religion kind of, but it's also really deeply sort of like in the art world. He balances both things really well. Um, so yeah, it's someone I think you would love to talk to as well.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no problem. I really I want to talk to you. Anybody doing something, you know what I'm saying? Try to be a
Sure.
catalyst for getting this stuff out there. Because I know what it's like, man. When you're doing something and you, I'm not gonna say need support, but you could utilize it, you know, in certain
100%,
areas.
100%, 100%,
So
100%. I need any support I can get.
yeah, likewise, man.
Yeah.
But all right, bro, I'm gonna let you go. It's getting late. I'm gonna have to wake up and like, man. Be honest, man. I only stayed up this late for you, bro.
Thank you, man.
I'm an
Thank you,
early
my bro.
bird by heart. Like I usually wake up like in the next 4 hours.
Wow, thank you, my
Get
bro.
my day
Really
started.
appreciate
No,
that.
but it's all good. It's all good. I actually owe this to you. I've been one. I know I reached out saying I wanted to do an interview,
Yeah,
but the time just hasn't permitted for both of us. But I'm glad we're able to come together today.
Yeah.
okay,
All right, bro.
okay,
I'll let you.
okay.
Assalamu
Thank you,
alaikum.
my bro. Thank you. Much love.
Yep. Peace. And assalamu alaikum to Rashid. Peace to Clem de la Creme.
Clam!
Spiritual Hamza. We see you.
Actually, just before we finish, how can I? Because I wasn't sure if Clem was still in. Clem is another person you have to interview. He is an incredible guy, an amazing history. Spent 7 years in China. 1 year, like he's just incredible human being as well. Like you need
Yeah,
to get
set,
him up.
set it up. What can I look at of his work or what he's into, just so I can familiarize myself?
So it's
Clem de la Creme on Instagram. But like what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna connect you both on Facebook because busier there,
Okay,
so you guys can just get to know each other.
okay. And the C
Yeah,
Balinoff,
as well. By
he,
the way,
he was in
West
it. And
Coast.
okay, cool. Yep. And Love Soil, do you? I see you, man. And GOJ, salute to you, bro. Uh, Yeah, man, and we're gonna end this one. I just wanted to, cause I'm gonna try. I don't want to read comments as we're talking, get distracted. So I don't want people to feel like I just was ignoring them. So shout them out at the end. All right, bro. I'll holler at you. Peace.